Didn't always run smoothly though, like in 1973 when all 5 teams won 2 matches and lost 2 matches. Now, because they didn't do points difference at the time, they just decided that everyone was the champion. It's like trying to keep kids happy, you know, the whole "you're all winners." In the years following, other teams in Europe started to get better at rugby and actually got to a stage where they were regularly beating teams in the 5 nations. In 1997, Italy beat Scotland, France and Ireland home and away. So 2 years later, the 5 nations invited Italy in, creating the 6 nations as we know it. In recent years, there have been calls to expand the tournament further to other European teams. Georgia and Portugal have been prime candidates to join of late. It's also been suggested there could be 2 tiers with promotion and relegation to promote growth of the sport in Europe. But the existing nations are a bit reluctant. So for now, it looks like the 6 nations, or Six Nations, or Sei Nazioni, is here to stay.
Good evening, one. Good evening, all, and welcome once again to Trans-Europe Express, your weekly prescription of football from across the continent of Europe and beyond. Indeed, we'll be in at least 3 different continents as the course of tonight's show takes shape. I'm Danny Kelly. With me tonight, a change. Andy is having a rest that, you know, talk about well-deserved. Andy Brassel's not with us. So Kevin Hatchard, very much friend of this show, very much part of the show's history, and very much European football expert. Sadly, he's not wearing one of his TV appearance Star Wars shirts, which is a shame, but Kevin is with us for the next 3 hours. 3 hours that will see us getting through all of the big stories from across the continent. We'll also have Mbappe watch, a preview of the Champions League and the Europa League. Tim Vickery will join us from South America, and we'll have Tony Aoki joining us from the AFCON to look back on what's been a brilliant tournament. Welcome one, welcome all to Trans-Europe Express. Good evening, Kevin. How are you?
I'm very well, Danny. Great to be back.
Thank you very much indeed. And before we throw to our first feature, let's get ourselves back to Morocco, where in the last kick of the African Cup of Nations, the trophy may have been decided. Watching for talkSPORT, John Dunn.
Senegal 0, Morocco 0. Morocco awarded a penalty very controversially. Chaotic scenes as that decision was being made. And now we have Pape Thor, the Senegal manager, waving his players off the pitch. Such is his disgust at the decision. Nobody quite knows what's going on. The Morocco players have remained inside the penalty area. The Senegal players look totally confused, following their manager's instructions. Surely the game has to carry on. The referee is from DR Congo. He's totally lost control of this game. It was a poor penalty decision. It was a corner from the right. Brahim Diaz felt the touch from Malik Diaw, the West Ham defender. He went down, softest of penalties. VAR was checked, given penalty. What Senegal will feel even harshly done to. Early in injury time, they thought they had scored. That was from a corner. Abdoulaye Seck with a header that hit the post. Now, as that happened, it was adjudged that Hakim had fouled him. Again, so soft. From the rebound, Ismail Assar did score. The Palace midfielder, that wasn't taken to a VAR check. But then the penalty was, we still have absolutely nothing going on, Danny, other than the Senegal players on the touchline, Moroccan players wanting to take a penalty. We went into 8 minutes of injury time. Now on the clock, we've got 103 minutes and no sign that this penalty is going to be taken. If it is, it will be the last kick of the game in the African Cup of Nations final. Senegal 0, Morocco 0.
Wow, John, when you say there's nothing happening except for the incredible drama and the last kick of a tournament that's taken nearly 4.5 weeks to play, the Senegal players there on the side of the pitch in protest. Kevin, there is a part of me, and forgive me, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm really not, but we've talked throughout this tournament about how much money King Mohammed IV of Morocco has poured into football in that country, so much so that they were semi-finalists in the World Cup. One of their underage teams is world champions. They've got amazing stadia and training facilities. Part of me, just my heart sunk when I thought, what, a really controversial penalty to win the tournament? Please God, let that be a clear cut. Obviously, Senegal do not think it's clear cut. We're not watching it live. I'm watching the game between Milan and Lecce. We'll keep across that. And John, we've got several people out there. We'll see what John says. I mean, they're going to have to come back on. Otherwise, they'll be awarded the game by 3-0, as I understand the rules. I'm talking about Morocco there. Meanwhile, Kevin, I'm watching the game between Milan and Lecce, an important game for Milan, of course, very much in the race for the Scudetto in Italy. After 58 minutes, it's Milan 0, Lecce 0. You're watching the game involving Barcelona, top of the table in Spain.
Yeah, and it's half-time in that one, Danny, and Barcelona are actually 1-0 down. And it's been a really lively contest. Barcelona thought they'd taken the lead, but they had the goal ruled out for an earlier foul. Also, Lamine Yamal thought he had a penalty, but he was offside when he received the ball, so everything that happened after that was rendered moot. Pedri had a great early chance as well that was brilliantly saved. But it's Mikel Oyarzabal who's put Real Sociedad in front, and they've actually had a bit of a pick-me-up since the Pellegrino Matarazzo, who's worked extensively in Germany, went there. And so it's just a sense that they're starting to make that base of theirs in San Sebastian, Anoeta, or whatever you want to call it these days, just a bit of a fortress again.
Kevin, thank you for that. Let's get back to Morocco and to John Dunn. What's happening, John?
Senegal 0, Morocco 0. The clock says 106 minutes. The Senegal players, apart from Sadio Mane, have gone back down the tunnel, led by their manager. Even the supporters were waving for the players to go down the tunnel and leave the pitch. The Morocco players are all gathered in a huddle inside the centre circle. A reminder, it's 0-0. We're deep in injury time, and it's a very controversial penalty that has been awarded to the host, Morocco, after a VAR check. It was the slightest of touches on Ibrahim Diaz, the Moroccan striker inside the penalty area from the West Ham defender Malik Diaw. The referee sent to the screen. That was chaotic in itself. Normally we see in the Premier League how the players are told to remain back, but the players were on top of the referee, looking at the replay with him. So too the coaching staff of both teams. Absolutely chaotic scenes is the only way to describe it. And now we've got Sadio Mane, who can see his players down the tunnel, heading to the changing room. He's waving them back out. He wants them to finish the game, even if it means they concede this penalty. Of course, the flip side of that, it might be saved and we go into extra time and Senegal have an opportunity to win it. As things stand, as you said, Danny, if the game doesn't continue, it would end up being a 3-0 victory to Senegal due to them almost forfeiting the game. And now Pape Thiaw, the Senegal manager, with a shake of the head, looks as though he is waving his players back onto the field, and we might actually see this penalty being taken. 108 minutes now on the clock. We went into 8 minutes of injury time. Senegal 0, Morocco 0.
Amazing. And meanwhile, Christian Pulisic has done everything except score in that game Brilliant save by Lecce goalkeeper. Past the hour mark now, it remains Milan 0, Lecce 0. And here on talkSPORT, already it's chaos. That's how we like it. It's time for this.
Carrière le Paris Saint-Germain, Mbappé! Mbappé!
Little give and go, Mbappe's in! Oh, it's 2-2! He scored twice in 2 minutes!
Tête de qui Mbappé? Allez, Kylian!
Of course, there would be AFCON chaos on the very evening when we're bringing you Mbappe Watch in the week in which Real Madrid have, with the usual casual wave of their hand, dismissed their manager. Xavi has gone. And they've suffered, Kevin, a quite remarkable cup defeat to a level 2 side, a struggling level 2 side in Albacete. This is an amazing story. I mean, you know, your main beat is the Bundesliga. Xavi Alonso has been the star of the Bundesliga managerially alongside Vincent Kompany. Goes to Spain to the top job in world football. Some people, certainly Real Madrid, would say. And in a matter of months, he's gone. I say he's gone. Was he ever really fully there, Kevin?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. And when he made the move from Bayer Leverkusen, the thing I think Bundesliga observers wondered was whether he'd be able to impose the same kind of strictures that he did at Leverkusen, in the sense that he was able to get everybody on the same page in terms of how much work they did without the ball. He was able to have a kind of top-down managerial approach. And he was also able to manage upwards pretty easily because he had a great relationship with the sporting director, Simon Rolfes, and the CEO, Fernando Caro. And so he's come into Real Madrid, which is a completely different scenario. Now, he knows that. He's been a Real Madrid player with distinction. But it never really felt like a project that Florentino Perez, the president, was fully behind.
That was what's behind my question, yeah.
And because of that, it was doomed to fail, because there was a disagreement straight away because he didn't really want to take over for the Club World Cup. But Real Madrid wanted to install him early, so they had a good chance of winning that tournament. They really wanted to win that. And obviously Real Madrid weren't able to do that. And I think the nadir of his attempts to try and really impose his will on the squad come in the game they won in El Clasico against Barcelona in September, because it featured what was a tantrum, effectively, from Vinicius Jr. Xabi Alonso's trying to protect the lead. He takes Vinicius Jr. off, and Vinicius effectively shouts and screams and says, "This is why I'm leaving." And even though he apologised afterwards, he left Xabi Alonso out of that apology.
It was the most disingenuous apology, wasn't it? The one person he needed to apologise. He apologised to every single person on the planet who's ever lived. And I got apologised to 3 times in the statement. Yes. The one who didn't get apologised was his manager.
And that just showed you that he didn't have the ultimate authority that he was going to need to push this project through. And it took him time at Leverkusen to get them from the team that he'd taken over to the team that ended up winning an unbeaten league and cup double. And he just wasn't afforded that time. And there were players that weren't happy with what they were being asked to do, players that had reservations about the style. And there was talk of Fede Valverde being unhappy about being asked to play out of position. And in the end, he was going from game to game, knowing that a defeat was going to finish him off, and ultimately losing to Barcelona in that Spanish Super Cup final was the straw that broke the camel's back. But the more you think about it, the more you realise this was never going to work.
I don't suppose that Xabi Alonso will be out of work for very long, Kevin. His credentials as a manager, I don't think, have been damaged whatsoever by trying to herd the highly paid group of cats that currently comprise the Real Madrid squad. Next up, to risk their reputation, is a very different character, though. Of course, I know Xavi was an excellent Real Madrid player, but you couldn't necessarily describe him as a Real Madrid or Perez loyalist. Alvaro Arbeloa. Oh, let's get back to Morocco. John Dunn.
Senegal 0, Morocco 0. We've finally taken the penalty, and what an anti-climax. Brahim Diaz, who won the penalty. The Senegal players were taken off the pitch by their manager. We've had a delay of about 15 minutes. before the penalties, Senegal players trying to delay it further, and then Brahim Diaz has stepped up and he's just chipped the ball. You can't even call this a Panenka. He's just gifted it into the arms of the former Chelsea goalkeeper Edouard Mendy. The final kick of the African Cup of Nations. Morocco could have won it. They've missed it. The terrible penalty, terrible scenes, unique stuff here at the end of the AFCON. We go into extra time. Morocco with a gilt-edged opportunity to win this. Senegal will feel that justice has been served. Extra time on the way. Senegal 0, Morocco 0.
John, do you think it was deliberate because of the penalty controversy?
I'm just thinking that myself, Danny. It is so poor. He's just chipped it into his arm.
I mean, Brahim Diaz knows how to kick a football, doesn't he? We know he's been the best player in the tournament.
He's the leading scorer. He's got 5 goals in the 6 games. And like I said, he's just chipped it into his arms. I didn't see any communication between the two to say he was going to do that.
No.
But it does have a hint of, I don't know, was there embarrassment to go, let's just take this to extra time. But the scenes before that, like I say, unique. And it hasn't done what's been a great tournament any justice at all. That's sad for African football. Hopefully extra time lives up to the rest of the tournament. But what Senegal have done there, and Pape Thiaw, the manager, will leave a bad taste.
John, I know you've got a hot pot or something in the oven, but you're going to have to stay now and keep us up to date with everything that happens in the AFCON final, which has gone to extra time after Brahim Diaz dinked the penalty into the arms of Edouard Mendy. It remains Morocco 0, Senegal 0. What drama. Kevin, you were in the middle. We're talking about Alvaro Arbeloa, who has been promoted into the Poison Chalice as manager of Real Madrid. I mean, you could hardly have a more Real Madrid Florentino Perez hombre at the controls.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, because I think he is somebody that will, in inverted commas, defend Real Madrid's honour, and that will become relevant when we talk about the league game. But let's get to the Cup first. Let's get to his first game in charge, the Copa del Rey. So Alvaro Arbeloa, who used to play for Liverpool, of course, and Real Madrid, he stepped up from being the boss of Castilla, which is the reserve side. And his first game in charge is away at Albacete in the Copa del Rey. Albacete in the second tier, battling relegation, actually rested some players for this game. And Real Madrid had to come from behind twice, looked as though they were going to take it to extra time. And then Hefte Betancourt, who nearly quit football 9 years ago to become an electrician, but had to be talked out of it to carry on, he scores the most unbelievable winner, brilliant curling effort into the far corner, Albacete's first ever win over Real Madrid, and he knocks them out of the Copa del Rey. So a nightmare start for Arbeloa. Then he has to take charge of the league game this weekend, and that was against Levante at home. Now, they won 2-0. That's not the most interesting thing. Mbappe scored his 50th La Liga goal. Again, not the most interesting thing in a way. The most interesting thing is that a lot of the Real Madrid fans booed. They booed the players. Not Mbappe, actually. He didn't get booed. But Vinicius Jr. did. Jude Bellingham did. Some of the other players did. And most crucially of all, Florentino Perez was booed. And there were chants against him at the Bernabeu. Now, that has happened before, but not for a very long time. And this was actually an organised protest. And there was actually a moment where some of the fans in the stadium for Real Madrid were trying to cheer, and they were being booed by other fans in the stadium. And where it ties back to Arbeloa being a loyalist is he then came out and said, these people are not fans of Real Madrid. These people are kind of working against the club. Some kind of conspiracy theory. It was extraordinary, really. But it does show you the fans are not having this, or at least a big chunk of them aren't. They are feeling that Xabi Alonso has been hard done to here, and that player power is not something they want to indulge anymore.
Amazing, of course, all of that. And just to make the point, that in that win against Levante, Mbappe scored his 50th La Liga goal. for Real Madrid, because it is Mbappe watch, extended because of our coverage of the excitement in Morocco. Up next, we'll have a club focus with Kevin in mind. We've gone for Bayern Munich. It's going to be shortened because of the AFCON, but it'll still be very interesting. Thank you for sticking with us in a chaotic start, but a lovely start to Trans-Europe Express. Yeah, you're listening to Trans-Europe Express here on talkSPORT. Me, Danny Kelly, and Kevin Hatchard. If you haven't heard the start of the show, let me try and explain the drama to you very quickly. In the 110th minute of the game between hosts Morocco and Senegal in the African Cup of Nations final, a controversial penalty awarded to hosts Morocco. VAR backed it up. The players from Senegal then stood on the side of the pitch, refused to take part. Some of them went down the tunnel. They were brought back by Sadio Mane. The penalty was then taken by Ibrahim Diaz, who's been the star of the tournament. He chipped the ball, accidentally, presumably, into the arms of Edouard Mendy. It remained 0-0. That was the last kick of the game. They're into extra time. And, John Dunn, there has been a goal.
Senegal 1, Morocco 0. We've had 5 minutes of the first period of extra time, and Pat Gay, who had a great chance in the first half, saved by Yazin Bouna, has scored a spectacular goal here, receiving the ball left-hand side, midway inside the Morocco half. He just kept running and running and running, and as he got to the edge of the box, left-footed, he's unleashed a thunderbolt of a shot that's clipped the bar and dropped in the top right corner of the goal. We finally have a breakthrough, and it is Senegal 1, Morocco 0.
I mean, just incredible. And I promise you, from what I'm hearing, because I can't see that game for broadcast restriction reasons here in the Republic of Ireland. I doubt if that's the last drama of that game. John will keep us absolutely up to date with all that. His pot noodle will have to wait. Kevin, you've got about 5 minutes to tell us in our club focus, which you were going to luxuriate, let out your corsets and talk about Bayern Munich for 15 minutes. But you've got about 5 minutes to tell us now all the latest from that club, because you were at their game against Leipzig this weekend, where they were behind and then they weren't behind.
Yes, a real show of strength. It was an excellent performance last night in the second half. It was a dreadful performance in the first half. So Bayern were 1-0 down at Leipzig, and Leipzig could have had 2 or 3. It was a fantastic performance from Leipzig in that first half. They had Bayern on the run, scored a goal from Romulo, their big Brazilian striker. Antonio Nusa had a massive chance and put it over the crossbar. And so I wondered at half-time, I was alongside Stefan Freund, who you know well, of course, Danny, from his time at Spurs. And we were saying, I just wonder whether Leipzig have let them off the hook here. And lo and behold, early in the second half, Serge Gnabry equalises. And then the key is Michael Olise, because he comes on as a sub, makes a goal for Harry Kane, Kane's 21st of the league season. Then Olise swings in a corner, which is headed home by Jonathan Tah. Then Olise, with a brilliant run down the right wing, plays it across for a tap-in for Alexander Pavlovic. And then Jamal Musiala, who made his first appearance of the season for Bayern, he had that horrible injury with the clash with Gigi Donnarumma in the Club World Cup against PSG, where he broke his leg and dislocated his ankle. Thankfully, he's back, and he was able to set up Olise for Olise's goal, and that made it 5-1. And if I just reel off some of the numbers for you, Danny. So Bayern had already posted the best ever first half to a Bundesliga season ever. Now they've won 16 of 18 in the league. They've drawn the other 2. They have a staggering goal difference of plus 57. They've scored 71 league goals. The season record is 101. So they've still got 16 games to get to that. And they've scored at least twice in their last 26 Bundesliga games. I mean, these are phenomenal numbers. And you look at what Luis Diaz and Michael Olise are doing, they are being compared by some in German football to Robben and Ribéry. Now, Vincent Kompany's poured cold water on that and said, look, until they start winning the big prizes on a regular basis, you can't do that. Maybe then we can have that conversation. But the way they're playing, it's spellbinding. It really is.
Bit of German news for you here as well, Kevin. In the game I've been watching, Milan have really been struggling to break down a very resolute Lecce. To try and help with that, they took off Christian Pulisic after 73 minutes, brought on Nicholas Füllkrug. Yes, that Nicholas Füllkrug. 3 minutes later, he has given Milan a vital lead in that game in the San Siro. Milan 1, Lecce 0, Nick Füllkrug with the goal. Kevin, I'm going to finish this section by asking you then. I look at the odds and all the pundits talking about the Champions League, and quite rightly, you know, Paris Saint-Germain, Arsenal, Barcelona all get mentions. I think they're all, anybody who gets past Bayern Munich has got a good chance of winning this tournament. I think Bayern are right in there among the favourites.
Yeah, I'd agree. They've only lost one competitive game. That was at Arsenal. And I thought they held their own in the first half before Arsenal moved through the gears in the second half. And you could argue Arsenal are the best team in Europe right now. They're top of the Premier League by a distance. They're top of the Champions League
You might argue that, but go on, yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't argue that, of course. But I think if Bayern could sort their defensive issues out, and I think they have done a lot of work on that, I think they look a lot less fragile than they did last season. You look at the players, they're getting back to fitness. Alphonso Davies is back. Jamal Musiala's back. That's really important. So they've got the momentum. They've got the harmony, which you couldn't always say about Bayern down the years, but they do. You know, they all enjoy playing for company. And I think it's a really nice mix of youth and experience. They'll take some beating.
Yeah, I mean, anybody could run in, you know, all these teams can beat each other once we get into the knockout stages. I totally get that. But I think Bayern Munich are among my favourites for the Champions League, just because you bring so much firepower to the meeting. And Musiala, provided they can find a way to accommodate 6 brilliant forwards in 4 positions, and I'm sure they will. Just an interesting line coming out of Morocco now. My fantasy that Brahim Diaz would have to take another penalty if the game goes to a penalty shootout, has been smashed. He's been substituted. So the player of the tournament so far is off for Morocco. It remains there in incredibly dramatic, if not controversial, circumstances. Morocco 0, Senegal 1. They're into extra time. We'll tell you all about that. Meanwhile, Milan are beating Lecce by 1-0, and now look, of course, like they're going to get a second any second now. Because they've been pressing and pressing and pressing. You're listening here to Trans Europe Express, where next Kevin will take us through everything else that's been going on in Germany. Okay, I make no apology for repeating what's been going on in the final of the African Cup of Nations in Morocco. Deep into added-on time in the normal game, Morocco, the hosts, were awarded a penalty. It was controversial. The scenes surrounding the referee and the VAR screen to which he'd been directed were unlike anything I've ever seen. The penalty was allowed to stand. The Senegal players left the pitch, and then some of them went down the tunnel. There was a 15-minute delay before Brahim Diaz was actually allowed to take the penalty. It was an awful penalty, chipped directly into the arms of Edouard Mendy, the ex-Chelsea goalkeeper. That meant that was the last kick of normal time. They've gone into extra time. A goal from Pape Gueye has seen Senegal take the lead. Let's get the very latest now. Watching for talkSPORT, John Dunn.
Senegal 1, Morocco 0. We've just hit half-time in extra time. And just to add to the drama, driving rain now in Rabat. You mentioned Brahim Diaz there, did have a shot just after Pape Gueye had given Senegal the lead with a stunning left-footed strike in off the bar, his third goal of the tournament. Brahim Diaz hit a shot, was saved by Mendy, who was then replaced shortly after. Morocco really pushing forward. They desperately need that goal, of course. Ez Al-Zoui has been a constant threat down the left. His cross a moment ago, diving header from Youssef El Nesri. That was just wide of the target. And we've seen 17-year-old substitute Ibrahim Maybe, who's Paris Saint-Germain's young talent, showcasing his skill, really good skill, close control inside the penalty area, worked a shooting opportunity. Shot was blocked. The game has really come to life. We did see Brahim Diaz on the bench. Not sure if there was maybe tears in his eyes. He will look back on that missed penalty, surely with regret, although the conspiracy theory will still remain. Did he actually mean to miss it? Seems unlikely in such a crucial stage of the game. We're about to start the second half of extra time. Senegal 1, Morocco 0.
Thank you very, very much indeed. Kevin, give us the latest from the games being played in Europe.
Yeah, well, it is still Real Sociedad 1, Barcelona 0, although Marcus Rashford has just equalised for Barcelona, popping up at the far post and headed down beyond Alex Ramiro, the goalkeeper for Real Sociedad, who up until then had been phenomenal. He's made 7 saves tonight, one of them the best I've seen from any goalkeeper this season, which was a brilliant reaction stop to flick a Lewandowski header onto the frame of the goal. But this was a lovely cross to the far post. There was Rashford. So all square now. Real Sociedad 1, Barcelona 1.
Yeah, meanwhile, in the last knockings of the game in Milan, it remains Milan 1, Lecce 0. That 76-minute goal by Nicolas Füllkrug. Milan have got plenty of resources. They've just brought on the promising teenager Luka Modric to shore up the midfield, and Christopher Nkunku up front. But they're hanging on now because Lecce are having a last-minute go, and they've just been given got a corner to try and get a late equaliser. Kevin, let's turn our attention then to the
Danny,
Bundesliga.
Danny, just quickly. Real Sociedad have just retaken the lead.
No!
Gonzalo Guedes has just scored. It was chaotic in the Barca box. Joan Garcia had made a brilliant save to keep out an initial effort. The ball was bouncing around the penalty area, and Guedes just bashed it into the floor, and it bounced beyond the goalkeeper and just inside the far post. So it's Real Sociedad 2, Barcelona 1.
I'll say this, Kevin, you can come back next week because this has been the most dramatic start. I mean, the start of this programme is often interspersed with goals and penalties and things, but not like this. Let us go back to Germany then, Kevin. Our headline is Dro Way, because Dro Fernandez will tell us about... Well, sorry, we're doing...
That will be in Spain. Here. You're teasing the Spanish section.
No, let's go back. Let's go back to Germany. I'm confused myself now. Dino Made Extinct is your headline for this because the fabulously named Dino Topmoller has been sacked as Eintracht Frankfurt coach. Surprise?
No, not really, Danny. And I'll tell you why. Even though they're in the mix for the Champions League qualification, and even though he finished third last season and qualified for the Champions League for the first time through the league for Eintracht Frankfurt, they've been really chaotic for quite some time now. They just can't defend. They make so many mistakes. And I actually commentated on his final game in charge, which was on Friday night. It was at Werder Bremen. They scored in the first minute. Frankfurt, Arno Kalimuendo, who is on loan from Nottingham Forest, but they've got an option to sign him permanently. And they just gave away cheap goals. And they were in a really good position at 2-1 up and completely collapsed in the second half, went 3-2 down. And by the time Ansgar Knauf equalised with virtually the last kick of the game, they virtually didn't celebrate because they knew the game was up. They knew the coach was going to get sacked. And Marcus Krösche, who's the sporting director, he has ultimate authority there. And he said afterwards, we can't go on like this. It's been the same thing for 17 or 18 games now. Too hectic in possession, no structure, conceding incredibly easy goals. And Topmuller, even though he was quite bullish afterwards and felt he was going to keep the job, I think he knew he had to go. They're 3 games, Danny, in 2026. 3-3 against Dortmund, gave up a 96th minute equaliser. They lost 3-2 at Stuttgart, 87th minute winner, and they've drawn this game 3-3. For a team that wants to finish top 4, it's not good enough.
Obviously, they would like Xavi Alonso, but he may have bigger fish to fry. It can't be Oliver Glasner because of the way he left there in the past. Where will they turn for the next coach?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this, because Krösch is ambitious. He will have a list. He will have big ambitions for this club because they've actually, I think, usurped Dortmund as the premier destination for young talent. I think they're only just ahead of Dortmund, maybe just on a par with Leipzig, but they're right up there. You think of the guys they've developed, Colomboani, Marmouche, Ekitike, they feel that they can develop this talent and sell it on, but that only works if you're in Europe and you can attract that talent. So if they miss out on Europe altogether, then the project suddenly looks very, very shaky.
Okay, tell me about Ragnar Akker, described to me by you earlier on as a unit. I love to hear about units doing well, and he did well for Cologne against Mainz.
He's a big old boy, Ragnar Akker, and he completely changed this game because it was Köln against Mainz, important relegation battle in Germany. Köln hadn't won in 8, and they were 1-0 down at half-time against Mainz. And they could have been further behind, actually. Silas, who's only just joined Mainz from Stuttgart, had a breakaway, should have scored, put it too close to the goalkeeper, Marvin Schweber. But Akker comes on at half-time, part of a triple substitution, heads an equaliser on 57 minutes, and then forces home a brilliant winner on 86. I say brilliant in terms of, if you like chaos, you would see it as brilliant because it comes off the post, hits him in the face and goes in. So huge win for Köln, and it just spikes Mainz's revival because they had started to look good under Urs Fischer.
Yeah, in my notes I've written here that Ragnar got the winner, brackets, off his face. I couldn't work out whether that was the method of scoring or he'd had a few before the game. Let's talk about Ricky J. Jones, of course, ex-Peterborough United, if you don't mind. Who was very much involved in Dortmund's 3-2 win against St. Pauli.
Yes, hero then villain. Dortmund didn't play particularly well, but they did take a 2-0 lead in this game against St. Pauli. St. Pauli pulled a goal back from a set play, and then Ricky J. Jones with a wonderful right-footed volley from a free kick that was whipped into the box. So that made it 2-2. Dortmund had blown a 2-0 lead, and it was deep into stoppage time that Ricky J. Jones is then trying to chase a bouncing ball on the corner of the penalty area. He gets there too late, brings down Maxi Bayer, gives away a penalty, and Emre Can, who's never missed a Bundesliga penalty actually, stepped up and won the game for Dortmund. So pretty brutal for Jones, and it's happened to St. Pauli a couple of times recently, giving up massive late goals.
Kevin, I'll come back to you for your star of the week in Germany, but there's been the miss of the century in the AFCON final. Here's John Dunn.
Miss of a few centuries. Senegal 1, Morocco 0. It remains in the second period of extra time, but Senegal could have sealed it when Sheriff Ndiaye was sent clear one-on-one into the area. The initial shot was saved by Bruno in the Morocco goal. It's come back to Ndiaye. He's got the goal in front of him. He's probably less than 6 yards out, and somehow, and I can't believe, he's somehow missed the target by some distance. He could have sealed it. He could have made them African champions. Morocco have been pushing forward just before that chance. Nayev Ergard with a thumping header that came back off the bar. From that incident, the shots just kept raining towards the Senegal goal, which is quite apt because it is chucking it down in Rabat. But Senegal players, bodies on the line, blocking everything. And so far, that Pape Gueye goal 4 minutes into the first period of extra time is what separates the side in this final. It's become absolutely thrilling now. Senegal 1, Morocco 0.
Thank you very much indeed, John. My star of the week in Germany is Woo Young-jong, the Korean forward for Union Berlin, who smashed in a late equaliser. Of course it was against his old club. Of course it was Stuttgart. He's my star of the week. Who's your, Kevin?
Wouter Burger, once of the Stoke City parish. He's been playing really well for a resurgent Hoffenheim team this season, and he got the winner against Bayer Leverkusen, a 1-0 victory. Leverkusen only had 2 shots on target in the entire game.
Final whistle's gone as well in Milan. Milan 1, Lecce 0. Nick Füllkrug with that goal after 76 minutes there for Milan, who remain very much in the race for the Scudetto. Next, here on Trans Europe Express, we really will be talking about football in Spain. I want to thank all of you who have written in over the past week to say that I always make the same mistake when I'm mentioning my great colleague Ali McCoist. I always mistakenly flick his name over to the legendary Scottish football manager Ali McLeod. So I'm going to try and avoid that this evening. Super Ali McCoist is back on talkSPORT Breakfast tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. with Jeff Stelling. The guys will be joined by a host of guests, including former Spurs and West Ham manager Harry Redknapp and ex-Crystal Palace midfielder Sean Derry, as they look back on another huge weekend in the world of sport. That's Talk Sport Breakfast tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. with Jess Stelling and Ali. Set your alarms. Which takes us, Kevin, onto football in Spain, where our headline, as I previewed a little earlier on in what was a great piece of radio, is Dro Way, because I want you to talk to me about a player called Dro Fernandez. He is a phenomenal young talent at Barcelona for the moment.
Yeah, he's just turned 18, Danny, and he's been compared to players like Pedri. He's a player who plays with real personality, real quality. Played against Olympiacos in the Champions League and looked really good in a big win. And he played 5 times for the first team this season. And the feeling was that Hansi Flick was going to kind of drip feed him minutes over the course of the campaign. And then maybe next season he'd get a better crack at it, maybe. But it's emerged that he wants to leave the club this month. And he only has a release clause of €6 million.
Wow.
And it looks as though PSG are going to be the ones to take him. Now, I think that's significant for a couple of reasons. Firstly, that Barcelona would lose one of their key La Masia products that they wanted to keep. And B, that it just reinforces this idea that PSG have moved away from spending enormous amounts on established stars and they're trying to develop their own. For a long, long time, PSG were bringing in ready-made talents and were allowing top players from their own academy to walk out the door and play for other teams. And one of them, Jonathan Ikone, came back to bite them. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But this is definitely a herald that is changing. Now, what was really interesting about this is Hansi Flick was asked about it. He hasn't gone, Dro Fernandez, yet, but it looks as though he will. And he said, I won't directly speak about him until the deal's complete. But what he did do is he spoke positively about Marcus Rashford. And the reason he did that was he said, Marcus is on the top level, but what I really appreciate is how much he wants to be here. This is what I want to say to young players at La Masia. We are Barca. We're one of the best teams in the world. But if you play here, it has to be with your whole heart. You have to live for these colours. And if you aren't going to be like that, I don't want you. So he said he wouldn't talk about Dro Fernandez and then spent the next 5 minutes talking about him.
And Kevin, if this is a surprise, unless Barcelona can pull a rabbit out of a hat or a lever, I'm even more amazed by the news surrounding their great German goalkeeper, Marc-Andre ter Stegen.
Yeah, so it looks as though he's going to go to Girona on loan. And I think there's a few reasons for this, really. That might seem quite unambitious from his point of view. But it's the least upheaval for him personally, because Girona's just down the road from Barcelona. And all he wants, really, is he wants regular first-team football. He wants to be able to show Julian Nagelsmann that he's fit, that he's in good form. And if he can play for Girona in La Liga between now and the end of the season, that gives him the best possible chance, I think, of playing in the World Cup and usurping Ollie Baumann as Germany's number one. So I think it's a pragmatic solution for everyone because he's got no immediate future at Barcelona. And the truth is, he probably hasn't got a long-term future at Barca either.
No, but there are lots of big clubs in Europe who would have been happily to take Marc-Andre for 4 or 5, 6 months in the run-up to the World Cup. But I totally get your point. What should we talk? Let's talk about Atletico Madrid. If I tell you they won 1-0 against Alaves, no one will bat an eyelid. Goal by Sorloth there. But and this is no surprise in some ways, but it's now kind of kept the stats start to officially confirm that Diego Simeone and his great goalkeeper, another great goalkeeper, Jan Oblak, are increasingly officially the best defensive unit that Spanish football's ever seen.
It's phenomenal when you look at it, Danny. I mean, they absolutely battered Alaves in this game, but only got the one goal. Alexander Sørloth scored early on in the second half. But Oblak now has kept clean sheets in 47% of his La Liga appearances. That is the highest percentage ever in La Liga. And Simeone, if you look at coaches who've managed 200 or more games in La Liga, his percentage of 47% clean sheets is the highest of anyone. So it just shows, I mean, that is a phenomenal achievement. Nearly half of your games in the league and you've kept a clean sheet. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is something else. I mean, I'm a great fan in some ways of defensive football. The Atletico team, of course, when they had Jimenez and the gang at the back, was something to watch. But that is just... But now I've seen it in cold black and white figures. It's amazing. Meanwhile, Athletic Bilbao, who are having a really difficult season, Kevin, are at it again.
Should just say, Danny, they are indeed. Real Sociedad, who still lead Barcelona 2-1 in the 88th minute, have just had Carlos Soler sent off. It was a lunging challenge. He got given a yellow card initially. That's now been upgraded to red. So if Real Sociedad are going to win that game against the La Liga leaders, they're going to have to dig in to do it. Now, just moving on to Athletic Club, they've lost 10 of their last 17 La Liga games now. They lost to Mallorca 3-2. Vedat Murici scored a hat-trick for Mallorca. And 2 of those were penalties, and pretty controversial ones as well. The first was a handball against Danny Vivian that I thought was really soft. The other one, Yuri Bichiche, gets challenged by Murici, throws his hands out as he goes down, and ends up handling the ball. And that proved to be the winning goal. That second penalty, they had Gorka Guruseta sent off for arguing on the field, and then Inigo Leque, one of their subs, then got red carded as well. So they're pretty angry about that Athletic Club. And Ernesto Valverde, who's under increasing pressure, the coach, he said the penalties were given by popular acclaim. And Unai Simon, the goalkeeper, said that the red cards were based on exchanges he didn't believe had happened effectively. So,
Kevin, let me stop you there, Kevin, because after 4.5 weeks of football, rain, sunshine and snow, the AFCON has come to an end after a final of extraordinary drama. Let's get the final score now, and it comes from John Dunn.
Senegal are kings of Africa for the second time. The final score, Senegal 1, Morocco 0. An unforgettable game, not necessarily for the right reasons. First half, Morocco thankful to goalkeeper Yazin Bouna to making really good saves to deny Pape Gueye and Iliman Ndiaye. Second half, Arab El Kaabi had Morocco's best chance, but steered wide. Then we got into injury time, and that's when this game took off. Senegal thought they had scored. Abdul Sek with a header against the post, converted by Ismail Sarr. Referee pulling it back, Hakimi with a foul on Sek in the build-up. Felt soft, no VAR check. Few minutes later, Ibrahim Diaz, the slightest of touches as a cross came in from Malik Diouf. VAR check was given. The referee, surrounded by the players and staff from both sides, chaotic scenes. He gave the penalty, and then the manager of Senegal, Pape Thiaw, took his players off the pitch. Some of them made it into the changing room. After 15 minutes, Sadio Mane, on what could be his last AFCON appearance, got the players back out. Ibrahim Diaz, leading scorer of the tournament, took the penalty but chipped it harmlessly into the hands of Senegal goalkeeper Edouard Mendy. Into extra time, 4 minutes in the first period. Pape Gueye picked up the ball midway inside the Morocco half, raced forward, got to the edge of the area, unleashed a cannonball of a shot into the top corner, in off the post. That proved to be the winner, but then there was the miss of the tournament, miss of many tournaments from Sheriff Diaw. Could have had a tap in, but steered wide. Morocco pushed to get themselves level. Agard smashing one against the bar, the nearest they came. Celebrations underway here in Morocco. Senegal are kings of Africa. Senegal 1, Morocco 0.
Listen, John, thank you very much indeed, and you've kept us so beautifully up to date with everything that's been going on in that slightly mad final. No doubt there'll be much to comment about the fact that Senegal have won the tournament while taking their players off the pitch for, well, it was between 12 and 15 minutes. There was none of them on the pitch. Quite extraordinary. Very quickly, because we need to take a quick break, Kevin, my star of the week in Spain. I promised not to mention West Ham United. Then Nicholas Füllkrug scored in the big game in Milan. And now my star of the week is Pablo Fornals, who got a long-distance winner for Betis against Villarreal. Who's your star of the week in Spain?
Osasuna's Ante Budimir, two classic centre-forwards goals. Osasuna twice came from behind to win a cracker. 3-2 against Real Oviedo. Victor Munoz scored a stoppage-time winner. Still 2-1. Real Sociedad in stoppage time against Barcelona, by the way.
We'll get more about that when we come back in a few minutes' time after we've had some news and sport headlines for you here on talkSPORT, where you've been enjoying, and I hope you've been enjoying, quite the most dramatic and chaotic first hour of Trans-Europe Express that I can remember. Where is Andy Brassell when you need him? The Six Nations, where giants do battle and legends are made. Epic sports which demands an epic voiceover every time. And actually has an interesting story as well. It all started back in 1871 when Scotland beat England in the very first international rugby match. The other home nations were a bit jealous, wanted in on the action, and after England played Wales in 1882, they all decided to hold an annual festival of international rugby, or the Home International Championship, which kicked off a year after. Now, the first decade was dominated by England and Scotland until Wales finally won in 1893 and Ireland a year later. After years of dipping in and out of the championship, France was invited to join full-time in 1910. But because France isn't a home nation, they had to give it a rebrand and settle on the Five Nations. But France were actually kicked out of the tournament in 1931. They were accused of paying players when rugby was still strictly an amateur sport. They had to wait years to be let back in, but after World War II, the Five Nations resumed. Didn't always run smoothly though, like in 1973 when all 5 teams won 2 matches and lost 2 matches. Now, because they didn't do points difference at the time, they just decided that everyone was the champion. It's like trying to keep kids happy, you know, the whole "you're all winners."
In the years following, other teams in Europe started to get better at rugby and actually got to a stage where they were regularly beating teams in the Five Nations. In 1997, Italy beat Scotland, France and Ireland home and away. So 2 years later, the Five Nations invited Italy in, creating the Six Nations as we know it. In recent years, there have been calls to expand the tournament further to other European teams. Georgia and Portugal have been prime candidates to join of late. It's also been suggested there could be two tiers with promotion and relegation to promote growth of the sport in Europe. But the existing nations are a bit reluctant. So for now, it looks like the Six Nations, or Six Nations, or Sei Nazioni, is here to stay.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. I cannot guarantee that the second and third hours of today's edition of Trans Europe Express will be anything like as dramatic and fun-filled as the first, but they will still be great. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you can stay with us right through till midnight. I'm Danny Kelly here on Trans Europe Express, and this is the bit where I normally say my co-host is Andy Bressel. Andy's got various important things to do, and so Kevin Hatchard is here with us tonight, which is just great. During the course of the next 60 minutes, we'll be bringing you all the latest from Italy, from France, and getting stuck into a very important round in the Champions League, whatever we're calling it these days, which go a long way to deciding who qualifies for the top 8 and automatically into the last 16, and who qualifies for the punishment round. We have to play 2 more games in order to qualify for that round of 16. It should be a belting hour. Thank you for listening. Welcome one, welcome all to Trans Europe Express. Final whistle has gone in Milan. Final whistle has gone in the AFCON. And now, Kevin, the final whistle has gone in the Basque Country.
And the La Liga title race is alive. Just 1 point between Real Madrid and Barcelona now, because the leaders, Barcelona...
Yeah, sack the manager. Sack the manager.
Sack the manager. Get him out. They have lost 2-1 at Real Sociedad. And this game contained one of the best goalkeeping performances I've seen this season. Alex Ramiro in the Real Sociedad goal, unbelievable. So it was a chaotic first half. Real Sociedad led at half-time through Mikel Oyarzabal. Lovely finish from him. And then Alex Ramiro just pulls off a string of saves, including a brilliant fingertip stop to touch a Dani Olmo effort onto the near post. Then there's a cross to Robert Lewandowski, who's, 8 yards out, powers the header goalwards, and somehow Ramiro's moving to his right, shifts his weight back to his left, and tips the ball onto the frame of the goal. Phenomenal save. But they did eventually break them down, got an equaliser through Marcus Rashford, and then just moments after that, Real Sociedad marched up the other end, and Gonzalo Guedes, with a bouncing volley, puts them back in front. Unbelievable display from Pellegrino Matarazzo's men, and Barcelona's run of 11 straight competitive wins is over.
Thank you very much indeed. Just to remind you that earlier than usual tonight, starting at 11 o'clock, the coverage, you can hear American football over on talkSPORT 2, the last of what are effectively the quarterfinals. I won't go into the complications of what they actually are, between the LA Rams and the Chicago Bears. In the other game that's live now, in the gently drifting snow of Foxborough, outside Boston. The New England Patriots are 21. The hosts, New England Patriots, are 21 points to 13 ahead of the Houston Texans, which surprised me slightly because Texans have really, really relied on their brilliant defence all season. New England so far finding a way past that defence, which takes us, Kevin, to Italian football. We haven't written a funny or punning headline for this because rather sad news. Fiorentina have been having a desperate season, bottom of the table for much of it, but have been coming around. We know that Fabio Paratici is supposed to be leaving Spurs at the end of the transfer window in about 10 days' time to become the head of football there. But during the week, the news that the man who runs the club and owns the club, Rocco Commisso, passed away.
Yeah, and it's a major, major blow to the club because he was so well loved. He was born in Calabria. He moved to New York when he was 12 with his family and became a self-made billionaire. He made his fortune in media, in cable television, invested heavily in football in New York, bought Fiorentina in 2019. And you have to look at the spell that they've had since he took over because they've qualified for a Coppa Italia final, made the Conference League final twice, lost all those finals, unfortunately, but it was a wonderful run for them. West Ham, of course, beat them in one of those finals. And
thought we weren't going to mention West Ham in this show. That's the third time they've come up now.
Yeah, that's probably too many now, isn't it? It's probably too many. And it wasn't just on the field they had that success, because what he did was he invested heavily in the infrastructure, in getting the training facilities right. He tried his best to invest in the stadium, in the Artemio Franchi, but the local authorities didn't always see eye to eye with him about that. He was very passionate. The club has responded by saying that Fiorentina was the greatest gift Commisso had ever given to himself. And the coach, Paolo Vanoli, described him as a great man. There were moments of silence ahead of every Serie A game across the league. And I think this was a man that had great respect and great admiration for what he'd done.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, a universally admired figure. It hardly matters, but Fiorentina beat Bologna by 2-1, which is a really good result at Bologna, mind. It means they've only lost one of their last 5 games and given themselves a real chance to avoid relegation, which had looked earlier in the season like an inevitability. Meanwhile, at the other end of the table, Napoli, Antonio Conte, beat Sassuolo by 1-0, bringing to an end a run of unsatisfactory draws.
Yes, and it was much needed because they'd been held again in midweek. But Stanislas Lobotka scored the winner in the 7th minute. Now, he is, as we know, a holding midfielder that just fills in all the gaps in midfield generally. But he took this really well. It was a volley just inside the penalty area. It was his first goal since 2022. It was unbelievable. And it was pretty tense after that. Vanja Milinkovic-Savic, the goalkeeper, had some important saves to make. One of them he didn't know much about. He kind of fell on the ball, not really looking the right way, but he managed to get the job done. And Sassuolo, who won Serie B last season, pushed them hard. Antonio Conte, maybe with a bit of kidology, said that his team had done an extraordinary job, but they did get the win in the end.
And of course, Conte being Conte, he could not resist having it wasn't just thinly veiled, it was transparently veiled go at Ruben Amorim.
I would say no veil at all. No veil whatsoever.
Veilless.
Yes. So he was asked about Rasmus Højlund because Højlund's done pretty well at Napoli. He scored 8 goals in Serie A. I think we've seen the Højlund that we saw at Atalanta, which persuaded Manchester United to part with a fair chunk of cash to bring the Dane in. And his response when talking about Amorim and his treatment of Højlund was this: some young coaches nowadays are arrogant and they don't want to adapt. They see a young striker struggling and instead of training him, they blame him. They always complain and blame everyone but themselves because everything is handed to them on a silver platter. Pot, kettle, black, maybe.
Antonio, he's got many, many fine qualities as a man and a coach, Antonio Conte, but self-knowledge is just not one of them, is it? He lashes at you, think.
Extraordinary.
You're the worst. You're the worst version of that, Antonio. Anyway, we've heard about Milan's narrow victory with a substitute goal from Nicholas Füllkrug that keeps them in the running for the title. I think, Kevin, I stand to be corrected about this and made to look a fool in 3 months' time. I think the defeat for Juventus at Cagliari means they're not going to be champions of Italy.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. 10 points off the top now, beaten 1-0. They had been going really well. They hadn't lost since December the 7th when they lost to Napoli. So it's been a good run under Luciano Spalletti. And in this game, they had a penalty that was given and then overturned. Kenan Yildiz was on a one-man mission to score, but it drew some great saves from Caprile in goal. And he also had a deflected shot that hit the post with the goalkeeper beaten. But the goal that won it, actually, not far past the hour mark, was a brilliant goal. Luca Mazzitelli, who's never scored this season previously, it was a free kick that was played to the edge of the area, caught it so sweetly, the volley, and that was enough for Cagliari. So that's a hammer blow for Juventus, and it just illustrates that because they've been playing catch-up, any slip-up like this is going to be so costly for them.
Yeah, not a great start to the season, then too many draws. I thought they were turning it around, but that is a hammer blow to their hopes. Now, my star of the week, Kevin, it may be the most obvious thing in the world, but I'm going to say it anyway. Lautaro Martinez of Inter got the winner at Udinese in a 1-0 win that keeps Inter very much favourites for the title. And I just wanted to say, perhaps because he's not as glamorous as some or as athletic as some, or perhaps because he decided he's perfectly happy staying at Inter and hasn't gone off to play in the Premier League or for Bayern Munich or for Barcelona, whatever. Lautaro Martinez is at the same time really famous and totally underrated. He is one of the world's great strikers, and I just wanted to give him those flowers after the back of that goal, because I sometimes think people just pretend like he doesn't exist. I don't know. He's my star of the week.
I think he's like Bastoni and Barella, actually, Danny. I think people can't compute that there are certain players that want to stay at Inter and want to stay in Italy because they really enjoy it and they win stuff. So I think they can't quite.
And because Italy's a wonderful country to live in.
Yes.
Who's your star of the week, Kevin?
Daniel Marlon, who, of course, has made the move from Aston Villa to Roma, and he scored in his debut in a 2-0 win at Torino. That was the opening goal, and it was very nicely taken too.
Okay, listen, the snow is falling slightly more heavily now in Foxborough, but I'll give you more on that game as it unfolds. I mean, American football doesn't tend to stop even if the pitch gets covered in snow. It's only if it becomes unsafe for people to go home. And New England are still winning 21-13 there. Next, though, we'll be going on to talk about everything that's been going on in France. Yeah, as most of you who listen to me regularly know that I do these broadcasting these days from my little studio in Kelly Castle in the Kilkenny Hills. There are many good things about it. There are many bad things about it as well. I miss my colleagues in London. But the best thing about it is that Mrs. K can occasionally creeps quietly into the room past the heavy door I've set up on this studio and produces quite the most magnificent cup. I call it tea. You'd call it tar. It's almost black and it's just wonderful. So thanks to her indeed for that. And thanks to Kevin for this headline as we turn our attention to France. And the headline is, what a man, what a man, what a mighty Usman. There's, of course, a disco connection there for you. But you're talking about, Kevin, I'm interested in this because Ousmane Dembele wins the Ballon d'Or, arguably for his performance in the second half of last season. And he started the second half of this season in very similar form.
He's on the charge again, and he was instrumental in their 3-0 win against Lille on Friday. Superb double. First goal was a shot from range. His second goal, if anybody has not seen it, please go and watch it many, many times, because he gets the ball in the box, he shuffles away from a couple of challenges, and then even to have the idea to just lift it almost directly up over the goalkeeper, it's just an unbelievable jaw-dropping finish, him at his best. And Luis Enrique, the PSG coach, said afterwards it was like a PlayStation goal where you press all the buttons at once. I think Luis Enrique needs to up his game, if I'm honest. That's not the way you win at PlayStation football.
And you would know, Kevin, and you would know.
To my eternal shame, I would. Yes, many hours.
Between you
wasted.
and the kids' football games, and Andy and his obsession with Lego, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But then I've got a brother who spends all his money on what he calls action figures, but I call dolls. You know.
Quite right too. But Dembele's now got 4 goals in his last 3 games, Danny, and it just underlines what you were saying, that the whole reason he won that Ballon d'Or was because post-Christmas he had the most unbelievable run of form, and it powered PSG to win everything there was to win. And if they can do that again, they've been off it, no doubt. Some of the performances in the Champions League have been top, no doubt, but I think a lot of the stuff in Liga has not been, and they've looked like a tired team to me at times. Desiree Doué's had a couple of injuries that have been, sizable. They look like they're carrying a bit of fatigue from all the games they've played. Because let's not forget, they've played the Club World Cup. They went all the way in the Champions League last season. They've been off playing the Super Cup. They've been off playing this intercontinental FIFA thing. They went to Qatar for that. They're in Kuwait for the Trophée de Champion against Marseille. So, some people will say world's tiniest violin, but it does all make a difference, I think. And so if they could do what they did last season and really start to motor in the second half of the campaign, watch out.
Well, they're free to concentrate in the league now because they went out of the Coupe de France, the French FA Cup. Kevin, one of my favourite stories in European football this season has been the re-emergence in the top level of French football of Paris FC. They're very, 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 very near neighbours. We know that the ticket office for Paris Saint-Germain is actually in the Paris FC stadium, which is 15 metres away from the two stadiums on top of it. They literally touch each other. But Paris put PSG out of the French Cup.
They did, and it was one of the old PSG players who did it, Jonathan Ikone. He got the goal in the second half. PSG felt that the referee hadn't really protected them. Gonzalo Ramos had a bit of a moan about that.
Now I can hear the violins, Kevin.
Yes, indeed. There they are. And even more so when you hear what Luis Enrique said. So he was very catty afterwards. He said, well, we clearly deserve to win the match, but we accept the result and we wish Paris FC luck for the rest of the competition. I hope it will give us even more motivation to win Liga and the Champions League, because they are the important competitions we want to win.
Oh, shut up, Lewis. If they're going to win the French League, they're going to have to deal with a Lens team who are putting together a quite extraordinary run, Kevin.
They're not going away, Lens. Top of the table, beat Auxerre 1-0. 8th straight Liga victory. Club record, never done that before. They've won 10 in a row in all competitions. Wesley Saïd got the winner in the 65th minute. And what I really liked about this is when you get these situations sometimes when an outsider is challenging for the title, they always want to play it down. They're always like, oh, well, we'll do our best. We'll see how far we can go, but we can't realistically be expected to try and win it. Well, Pierre Sage, who's a brilliant coach, I think, hasn't taken that tack. He said, look, we loaned our first place to PSG on Friday, and now we've got it back. And he said, we won't give up. We're chasing something really exceptional. And he said, even though the 10-match winning streak isn't a title, he said it's something to sit by the fire and read to the grandchildren. So he's proud of that 10-match winning run, and so he should be.
Listen, thank you very much indeed for that. But Kevin, if Pierre Sage continues to prove what an excellent coach he is, Sebastian Pocagnoli at Monaco may be heading down the other side of that highway.
So with my Bundesliga hat on, Danny, I was outraged when Adi Hutter got the sack at Monaco. And it seems that I was right, because his replacement, Sebastian Pocagnoli, is having an absolute nightmare. So he's lost 7 of the last 8 in Liga. They were beaten 3-1 at home by Lorient. They did actually equalise in the game. Ansu Fati scored with about quarter of an hour to go. But then they fell apart, conceded in the 85th and the 87th. Lorient had not won a game away from home all season. Eric Dyer made his first appearance since October, and I'm a fan of Eric Dyer. I thought he was a really important member of that Bayern squad when he was there. But let's not beat about the bush. He was dreadful. And he was at the... L'Equipe said he was at the scene of the crime for all 3 goals. Certainly at fault for a couple of them. And I know injuries have been a problem. I know Paul Pogba's been out now for quite some time again. But there's just no cohesion. There's no consistency at all to what they're doing. And I thought the most damning thing came from the opposition coach, Olivier Pontaloni. He said, when we took the game into our hands, Monaco was scared of us. That's Monaco at home.
Yeah.
And for Lorient to go there and feel that impunity, that is a really bad sign.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not doing this deliberately because Eric Dyer, who earlier in the week had turned down the chance to turn out for West Ham United, I can't stop mentioning them. Who's your star of the week in France?
Yeah, I'm going to go for Gary O'Neill. I'm going to go for a manager.
Amazing.
He's just taken over at Strasbourg, and he won his first league game in charge. They won a derby against Metz, 1-2-1. And it's been a decent week for Strasbourg because they won 6-0 at Avranches in the Coupe de France. So who needs that Rosinia fella? Or Rosenia, as his dad would say. I'm still not quite sure what we're going with, actually.
No, I'm sticking with Rosinia until he tells... I don't know now. It's all very complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Leroy's gone for Rosenia and Liam's gone for Rosinia. So
okay, well, and that's the way language develops over the years. My star of the week is also a manager and also familiar to fans of English football, Roberto De Zerbi at Marseille. Monaco and making Marseille look like the sane club in the south of France was a very rare occurrence indeed. But he has overseen his side score 14 goals in the past few days. They won 9-0 against Bayern. I want to make a joke about a tapestry of midfield brilliance there, but I won't. In the Coupe de France, and then this weekend they won 5-2 at Angers, meaning they got 14 goals in their last 2 games. And Roberto De Zerbi is doing well at Marseille, and of course, big European clubs have always got their eye on what he is doing because he's a brilliant, if sometimes a little bit volcanic, football coach. Okay. Tuesday and Wednesday sees the return of the Champions League. 6 English teams involved. We're now down to the real guts of the competition. These next two rounds of matches will decide who finishes in the top 8 and qualifies automatically for the last 16, and the other teams behind them who go out completely and who get into the Jack Pip Brook of the Athletic. So beautifully described as the punishment round where you play 2 more. We'll bring you all... we'll try and preview as many of those matches as we can next year on Trans Europe Express.
Be there for Super Bowl 60 on talkSPORT.
Yeah, with the Super Bowl just around the corner, talkSPORT is giving you and a friend the chance to experience it live. You've got until Thursday to enter for a chance to win tickets to the Super Bowl on Sunday the 8th of February. Return flights to San Francisco, 3 nights accommodation and spending money included. In just a few weeks, you could be soaking up the Super Bowl atmosphere and exploring San Francisco. Sounds good? Well, here's how to enter. For your chance to win, just text the word WIN, W-I-N, to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or you can phone, pens at the ready everyone, 0343 418 7260. The lines close this Thursday at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. It's 18 plus and UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C are at talksport.com. So for your chance to win, text WIN to 83338. Do it now. Yeah, meanwhile, 2 of the teams competing for a place in that final in San Francisco. In the snow in Foxborough has changed to a kind of driving sleet, and it's Houston Texans 16, New England Patriots 21. They're well into the third quarter there. Kevin, the Champions League is back. I know you'll be working on and commentating on several of these matches, and we've got 5 of the games for you over 2 days here on the talkSPORT network. But let's start with the English teams. And with your German hat on, Dortmund, inconsistent themselves, come to London to take on a Spurs team who are the very picture of consistency, i.e. no good at all.
Yeah, and you'd have to say Dortmund are in better shape right now in terms of personnel, in terms of, the injuries, in terms of the cohesion. They're a little bit further ahead in that journey because, in a way, Niko Kovac has done a similar thing to Thomas Frank, but the difference was he was able to sustain himself by getting enough wins. He didn't start well. Kovac came in to replace Nuri Sahin midway through last season, and it wasn't going well. I think he lost 4 out of the first 5 or 5 out of the first 6. And there were murmurings about the players weren't happy with him being a taskmaster and all of this business. They had reservations. And then they just went on a phenomenal run of form, and they got to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. They gave Barcelona a run for their money. And they got enough wins in the Bundesliga to go from mid-table into a top 4 position. And nobody had seen that coming at one stage of the season. So he now has that authority and that time that Thomas Frank simply doesn't have at the moment. So, yeah, I would say of the 2, Dortmund looked the more stable by quite some distance.
Yeah, I mean, we'll know more after the press conferences tomorrow, but at the moment, Spurs don't have a single fit or available, as far as I know, midfield player, unless they're intending to play Pape Matar Sarr, who will get back from the AFCON sometime tomorrow, I suspect, probably after a party where Senegal have won that trophy for the second time in their history. The big game for me, I mean, it's not a knockout game, so it's lost some of its meaning, but Arsenal are... with the bookmakers in England, they are the favourites for the Champions League. They go to Inter, who I think should also be considered among the favourites, Kevin. This is a huge clash.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's important for Arsenal because they're in need of just a little bit. It's a really weird position for them, I think, because they're a long way clear in the Premier League. I know everybody's getting very jittery about it, but the truth is they've got sizable advantage. City haven't been winning games in the Premier League. Arsenal are grinding out these results.
If City win every game, Arsenal's still got to find a way to lose 3,
Yeah.
It's a great lead.
And they've been the best team in the Champions League so far. They're the only team to beat Bayern all season in any competition. So... I do think Arsenal are perhaps performing better this season than some of their jittery fans are making out. It's important for Inter as well, because Inter won their first 4 games of the Champions League and then lost at home to Liverpool in a super tight game. Liverpool played really well and just edged it with a soft penalty and came away with the points. So that was a bit jarring for Inter, that had a long unbeaten run at home and suddenly had that defeat. And then they went to Atletico Madrid, played well, lost the game. And Christian Kivu kind of raged about that afterwards, their coach, about a little bit of naivety. So if they've got designs on making that top 8, this is really big for Inter.
Continuing with the English teams, Kevin, I think a fascinating game in the south of France. Marseille, we just talked about, are in fluid, good goal-scoring form. Liverpool, a little bit more stuttery than they would want to be, though they are unbeaten in a long time now. And of course, if you have 35 shots at home, you expect to win, as they did against Burnley. But this is a tricky little assignment for the Reds.
I think it's a really hard game. And I think actually you look at Liverpool's draw and you look at the games they've had away from home, all pretty tough, to be honest. I mean, went to Galatasaray, lost, went to Frankfurt and were able to win that game comfortably, but it's not easy to go there. Went to San Siro, beat Inter, and now this trip to the Velodrome. And, you know, Marseille are a fair way behind PSG and Lens, but they are playing good football. They're scoring buckets of goals, lots of forwards on form. Greenwood, Paixão, Aubameyang's a danger, Guiri. They've got goals from all over the pitch. And the thing that really strikes me about Marseille is they really feel like a De Zerbi team. Like they've got his stamp, his handwriting, they call it in Germany, all over that team. So this is a really big test for Liverpool mentally as well as technically.
To continue with the English teams then, Manchester City go to the Arctic Circle to play Bodø Glimt. Newcastle are at home to a PSV team that are in fantastic form in the Netherlands. My favourite, though, is that in West London, Chelsea will take on Paphos in the David Luiz derby. Who could have seen this coming, Kevin? 18 months ago, if I'd said that would be a match and David Luiz would be playing in it, you'd have laughed at me.
It is a bit mad, isn't it, really? I mean, to be honest, if you said to me that Paphos were not only going to be in the Champions League's league phase, but doing well. You know, they've been competitive in a lot of the games. And the thing that really stands out about them is how well drilled they are and how defensively tough they can be. You know, they're not easy to knock over. Bayern put a few past them, but they do that to most teams. And they've been competitive in most of the games. So, yes, Chelsea will be favourites, but Paphos will not be that easy to knock over. So this is one of those where at this level, if you just wander in and think you're going to get the victory, it's not that simple.
Okay, well, I'm really happy to tell you about the vast array of games we've got from the Champions League for you here on talkSPORT on Tuesday and Wednesday. On Tuesday, over on talkSPORT 2, the earlier kick-off between Bodø Glimt and Manchester City. Joe Shannon and Scott Minto will bring you that game. Then the big one, Spurs against Dortmund in the Champions League here on talkSPORT, presented by Adrian Durham, commentary from Jim Proudfoot and Danny Murphy. And over on talkSPORT 2, we'll have the game between Inter Milan and Arsenal, also in the Champions League. Adam Bridge and Alvin Martin, lovely Alvin, will bring it out. On Wednesday, 2 more games for you here on the talkSPORT network, both the 8 o'clock kickoffs. Here on talkSPORT, the game between Marseille and Liverpool, which I think has the capacity to be an absolute belter. While over on talkSPORT 2, as I say, PSV in such good form in the Netherlands come to a Newcastle team that probably need a bit of stability in their season. Cameron Pope and Dean Ashton will be your commentators for that. Meanwhile, as I say, at 8 o'clock you can hear Marseille against Liverpool. Adrian Durham will introduce the show, and the commentary will come from Jim Proudfoot and the former England captain Stuart Pearce. So I haven't had a chance to personally, I know Stuart wasn't well a while back. I didn't get a chance to say how much I hoped he'd made a full recovery. From what I gather, he has worked for Stuart for years on the press box, and really, really glad to hear that the great man is back to something approaching his fearsome fettle. You're listening to Trans Europe Express. Next, the Champions League game, the games that do not involve English clubs. Yeah, let me just remind you that the latest episode of the How to Win the World Cup podcast is live now on YouTube and on all available pod platforms. Matt Ford and comedian Alex Brooker are joined by 1988 world champion Emmanuel Petit. 1998, what am I talking about? 1998 world champion Emmanuel Petit, as they discuss the challenges of winning football's most prestigious competition. That's How to Win the World Cup, the podcast, available now on the talkSPORT app or on your favourite podcast provider. Kevin, of course, there are, many people think it's farcical. There are 6 English teams in the Champions League, in this league format. But let's talk about some of the games where none of those sides are involved. And I think with your German hat on, you want to start with the game in Greece between Olympiacos and Bayer Leverkusen.
Yeah, because I think this is a really big test for Leverkusen and Kasper Ullmann, their coach, because they've had a couple of difficult results recently. They were beaten at Hoffenheim at the weekend, 1-0, and that was against a direct rival for Champions League qualification. And they've largely had things all their own way since Ullmann got there, and he's kind of repaired things after Erik ten Hag made such a horlicks of the whole thing in the opening weeks of the season. But there's a lot of new players there, and there's a lot of young players there. And this is the part of the season where those big games come thick and fast. And I think they're not guaranteed to make it through. So if they were to lose in Greece against Olympiacos, suddenly they're potentially in a bit of danger. Now, Olympiacos have only got 5 points in the Champions League so far, but they won the last game at Kairat, and that's given them a bit of a lifeline. And if they were to win the last 2 games, and they go to Ajax on match day 8, who've been awful, suddenly there's a route to maybe sneak into the playoffs for Olympiacos. So in terms of the atmosphere, in terms of going away to a team that's got lots of European experience, I'm really interested to see just how good this Bayer Leverkusen team can be.
If they don't get something from the game, Kevin, there's a chance that they're not even qualifying for the punishment round. So it's a huge game for them. I want to talk about Galatasaray. 9 points from their 6 games, so liable to qualify. Not certain to, not going to finish in the top 8, I don't think. They can take on Atletico Madrid. The problem is, of course, for Atletico is that Galatasaray is a terribly difficult place to go to. Never mind all the spectators with their welcome to hell banners and all the rest of it. That's not on the pitch. But on the pitch, they've got Victor Osimhen, fresh from the AFCON. He'll be back for that. And a very, very good team of players. This should be a great game.
It should. And it comes down to which Galatasaray turns up, because you look at the way they started the league phase, they were absolutely destroyed by Eintracht Frankfurt, lost the game 5-1. It probably wasn't a 5-1 in the end in terms of the performance, but that's the way it turned out. And then they reeled off 3 wins on the spin. They beat Liverpool, and I think deservedly so on the night. I thought they were excellent, and they got that victory. But then in the last 2 games, they've lost to Union Saint-Gilloise and Monaco. So I think there's been a real opportunity missed here for Galatasaray, and I think for Turkish football, because I think actually to have had a team make the top 8, for example, and then go through straight to the last 16, I think would have been a real boost for Turkish football. Fenerbahce probably wouldn't have seen it that way. But I do think an opportunity's been missed. So you never quite know what you're going to get with them. With Atletico, we know how consistent and strong they are at home, but I still think there's a fragility away from home. I still think there's too big a gap between what they do in Madrid and what they do on the road. So this is important for them.
Yeah, meanwhile, under new management, Real Madrid will be at home to Monaco. A victory will see them, I think, just about qualified for the top 8. But, of course, Arbeloa's got absolutely no experience at this level. Look, put it this way, Real Madrid will be relying on their players' experience in the Champions League rather than that of their coach.
But then we're back to the old position with Real Madrid, aren't we? Are they going to just float through the Champions League on vibes and end up winning the thing? Because, you know, they've tried with Xabi Alonso to have more structure, have more technical detail, be more modern. And it hasn't worked because he didn't get the support that he needed from all levels of the club. Florentino Perez, the president, wasn't fully behind it. The players weren't universally behind it. I think Real Madrid were really hung up on something we didn't talk about earlier, actually, Vinicius' contract, because that runs out in a year and a half, and he had stalled contract talks because his relationship with Xabi Alonso was strained. So now Real Madrid will hope that they can get him back on board and get him to sign a new contract. And I think one of the things that's been really fascinating about Alvaro Arbeloa's press conferences so far, he keeps talking up Vinicius. He keeps talking about he's a brilliant player. He's one of the most unpredictable players in the world. He's really difficult to contain. That's because they're pandering to Vinicius and they want him to sign a new deal. So you could have a situation, Barcelona have lost tonight, so Real Madrid are now 1 point behind them in the La Liga title race. And as you say, if they win this game, and Monaco are terrible, so I think they should win this game, then they're on course to qualify for the top 8 and they'll be straight through to the last 16 of the Champions League.
Now, Kevin, I'm throwing you some games here that we haven't talked about even in preparation for the programme. The champions of Europe, Paris, go to Sporting, a Sporting team who I think it's fair to say, because of Porto's record-breaking start to the season in Portugal, it has gone unnoticed that Sporting are also in excellent form.
Yes, still a very good side. It's still that classic difficult place to go. And you're absolutely right, because Porto have been going so well under Farioli, it's kind of been underestimated what Sporting is still doing. And obviously they were hugely successful in the end last season. Ruben Amorim and, his replacement lasted just a matter of weeks in the end. So it was a hell of a job to turn that season around. So this is not a gimme for Paris. But what I would say about PSG in the Champions League, some of their best performances have been reserved for this competition. What they did to Barcelona away from home was phenomenal. What they did against Leverkusen in a game that ended up 10 against 10 at one stage, they won 7-2. 7-2 against Leverkusen. So, any team taking on Paris has to be aware of the fact that they can flick a switch and suddenly run riot.
We talked earlier in the show about Athletic Bilbao and what a poor season they're having, and they may well be looking to change the manager in the summer, if not before. They're doing terribly in the Spanish league, so they'll at least want to get into the last 16 of the Champions League. But they've got quite a tricky tie. They go to Atalanta, who are not perhaps the potent attacking force that they were 18 months ago, but still in all, you wouldn't want to go there relying on a result to keep you in the Champions League.
No, and I think what we've seen with Atalanta in recent weeks is what a good coach Raffaele Palladino is, because Ivan Juric was not getting the best out of those players, was not anywhere near the levels that Gasperini was hitting. And let's be honest, Juric only got the job because he's a Gasperini disciple. And they have a strong bond, and he's played for Gasperini, he's been his assistant. So he didn't last that long. And Palladino, who did really well at Fiorentina last season, did brilliantly at Monza before that, taking them into Serie A. We've seen what a good coach he is. So that, for me, makes Atalanta big favourites here. I think with Athletic Club, it has just been a really, really difficult spell for them. They actually started the season fairly well, but then Nico Williams was out injured. They really missed him. They've had other players injured as the season has progressed, and they've just not been able to maintain the same level. And I'm glad we've come back to talking about Athletic Club, actually.
Yeah.
Because one of the idle thoughts I had, and it's actually something that's starting to get a bit of traction in Spain, is the idea that Ernesto Valverde could leave the role at the end of the season, and the man who could replace him is Andoni Iraola, because there doesn't seem to be any movement on a new deal for him at Bournemouth. I wonder if he's reached the end of the cycle there. He is an Athletic Club man through and through, former player there.
Be an amazing appointment for them. No disrespect to Bournemouth.
No, it would.
It'd be an amazing appointment for Athletic Club.
It would, and he's in a really interesting position, I think, Iraola now, because I think there's a lot of respect for what he's achieved at Bournemouth, a lot of respect for what he's done at clubs before that. But I think his style and the way he manages only fits certain clubs. And it just strikes me that if he was to go in somewhere like Real Madrid, and he's been linked with that job before, they'd eat him alive, Danny. I couldn't see that working, because he's one of the coaches that absolutely needs 100% buy-in. And once he got it at Bournemouth after a tricky first few games, that's when they took off. But if he walked in at Real Madrid and said, right, we're going to be up and at it, we're going to press high, we're going to be really physical, he just won't get that kind of buy-in that he needs.
And the last one I want to preview, Kevin, if I may, is the battle between two former winners of the Champions League or the European Cup, who probably won't be winning it this time round. Juventus play Benfica. Defeat for Benfica would make it very difficult for them to even make the punishment round. I wonder whether Jose Mourinho's tactic of making the players sleep at the training ground the other day will have brought to life a rather snoozy Benfica side this season.
Yeah, well, as we'll talk about in the around the league section later, Danny, it's had another hefty defeat recently in the sense that they lost to Porto in the cup quarterfinals, and they've been playing catch up after a really dreadful start to the Champions League, which included losing at home to Karabakh on match day 1, and deservedly so, actually. So they really do need this result. And Juventus, as we mentioned earlier, have just been beaten by Cagliari. But the general direction of travel under Luciano Spalletti has been very good. So this is a really tough game for Mourinho, back in Italy, of course, where he's had great success, not only with Inter, but a fair bit with Roma as well, winning the Conference League. So, yeah, this is a huge game, and there's something quite lovely about it being two real icons of the European Cup.
Absolutely. I mean, it brings back all kinds of memories to me as well. Let's take another break and we'll get some more news and sport headlines for you. Still lots to get through in the final hour of tonight's edition of Trans Europe Express, including Tim Vickery from South America and Tony Aoki joining us for the last time from AFCON, where an already brilliant tournament in Morocco has been crowned by a hugely controversial victory for Senegal. You're listening to Trans Europe Express with me, Danny Kelly, and him, the great Kevin Hatchard.
green jackets have been lost at the 12th than at the Augusta City Dry Cleaners. Rory McIlroy knows this better than most. But what is Amen Corner and why is it so iconic? The famous sequence has always been there since the Masters began in 1934. It didn't get its name until '58 though, when American sports writer Herbert Warren Wind, on the left, wrote, "At the farthest reach of the Augusta National Course, down in the Amen Corner." He drew inspiration from the 1933 jazz song Shouting in That Amen Corner by the Dorsey Brothers. The reason behind its difficulty is all in the sand and the water. Tournament officials don't even bother to count the balls lost in there each year, such is the sheer number. The 11th, named White Dogwood, is a downhill 520-yard par 4 with a pond to the left of the green and a bunker to the right. Both cause a lot of trouble each year. The 12th, Golden Bell, is perhaps the most famous hole in the world, with danger everywhere. Many aim for the flag, but look, get it even slightly wrong and you're in the azaleas at the back, or the bunkers at the front, or even worse, Rays Creek. Or you can play it safe and aim for the open green on the left. You chicken. Tiger Woods once said, if you make 4 bogeys from Thursday to Sunday, you're doing well. And the highest ever score on that hole? 13. It's a par 3. Tom Weiskopf in 1980 was the sorry soul. Often the iconic Ben Hogan Bridge is the only thing players enjoy about Golden Bell. Even if you escaped there unscathed though, you met with Azalea, the dogleg par 5 13th. It tempts players to go for the green in 2, but cut over those trees on the left at your peril. Every year, it seems, Amen Corner destroys someone's dreams. Rory McIlroy dropped 3 shots through here as his round unravelled in 2011. In 2016, a year after navigating Amen Corner expertly, Jordan Spieth shot a quadruple bogey on the 12th to throw away his green jacket. I mean, it sounds like my game, to be honest. So who'll be the next to be brought to their knees, praying for mercy after Amen Corner?
Back to the final hour of tonight's edition of Trans Europe Express. I'm Danny Kelly. With me, as you've been hearing, Kevin Hatchard, and we've been having great fun in a very, very dramatic edition of the programme. And I say that having lived and broadcast through many, many dramatic editions of the programme. During the course of the next little while, we'll be going to Tony Aoki, who's been doing such sterling work for us in Morocco to get a sort of, now that they take a deep breath, talk about the final and the tournament itself, now that AFCON has finished in controversial circumstances. Kevin will take you through the some of the more important games in the Conference League and the Europa League, and then we'll take you around the leagues as well. But before any of that, of course, we go to South America and Tim Vickery. Welcome one, welcome all. Willkommen, bienvenue, Fulcher to Trans Europe Express. Yeah, let me tell you now that in the driving snow in Foxborough, for snow and sleet, about 4 minutes to go there. New England, the hosts, leading by 28-16. And about now, over on talkSPORT 2, you can start to hear the build-up to the final essentially quarter-final of the NFL season when the LA Rams take on the Chicago Bears. It should be fantastic, and talkSPORT has it live for you. Now, though, it's time to go to South America, and Tim Vickery. Hi, Tim.
Very good. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Really, really good, and delighted that you can join us here on talkSPORT. Where do you want to start? Bolivia taking on Panama in the build-up for the playoffs in March of the World Cup playoffs. Tell us about how that's going for them.
Well, not as well as they would hope. There's an element of euphoria in Bolivia that they've got this chance, and they haven't been to the World Cup since the last time it was in the States, 1994. And they've got themselves in with a chance this time in March in that fascinating little mini tournament in Mexico. They face Suriname, where they're probably the favourites, and then they face Iraq. So there is a real buzz around Bolivia, but it is unfortunate a euphoria that the team themselves are working overtime to try and play down, because they went into this game. They did beat Jordan 1-0 a few months back. After that, 4 consecutive defeats without scoring a goal to Russia, South Korea, Japan and Peru. Here at home to Panama, they have the returning hero back, possibly their best player, Ramiro Vaca, midfielder. Kev might remember him from Belgium. Got a lovely shot on him. He's been serving an 8-month ban for a doping offence. He was alleged to have taken something to deal with altitude. He's back, especially for him. This game is in his home city, Tarija, which is south of Bolivia, quite close to the border with Paraguay and with Argentina. Obviously, he's a little bit rusty. He hasn't played for 8 months. And Panama have brought effectively a B-side and changed almost the whole team at the half-time interval, but have only just relinquished a 1-0 lead. We're in the closing stages, might just have finished now. And the score there is 1-1. And the only goal that Bolivia have managed, their first for 5 games, is an own goal. So it isn't going very well. This time next week, they face Mexico. They'll look to have a few more matches. But at the moment, the World Cup place looks a long, long way away. It's a young side, Bolivia. They've put hope in a young generation. I don't expect them to do very much if they do qualify, but it will mean so much for them to get back to the World Cup for the first time in 32 years. The dream is still alive for the moment, but that bubble of euphoria is getting pricked with every game.
And Tim, just because one or two people like me will have been scratching their old heads and going, hang on, Bolivia against Suriname, isn't Suriname a South American country?
No. And yes, because, well, if you look at the map, if you want to be that nerdy and look at the map, But,
I do. Trust me, I do. And I know Hatchard does.
Always look at the map.
Consistency is the last refuge of the unimaginative. Those countries right up the top, which weren't colonised by Spain or Portugal, culturally, they exist in a world of the Caribbean and Central America, and not in a world
the cricket
of
in
South
Guyana.
America. Indeed, yes, and Curaçao as well, and so on. So Suriname are part of CONCACAF. They are not a part of South American football. I hope that answers your question.
It does.
I understand that might interfere with some people's sense of geographical purity, but as anyone who's followed the implementation of VAR in football must surely have agreed now, there is no such thing as this purity and perfection that the techno nerds would have us believe.
Absolutely.
Which takes us then on, and now look, I promised myself, and I know, Tim, you will probably understand why as well, very much pain for you as well over the weekend. I promised not to mention West Ham United in this 3 hours. They come up 5 times, blinking Fulkrug, etc. But what's happening with Paquetá? He didn't play, he wasn't in the squad for West Ham's victory over Tottenham at the weekend. Is he going back to South America?
Well, let's unpack this, because there are 3 different parties involved. There is the player, there is the club who wants to buy him, and the club who currently own him. From the point of view of Paquetá, he wants out. He wants to go. When all of the scandal hit over him, he was on the verge of a likely move to Man City. That ship would seem to have sailed. And it would appear, Danny Lakay, that the biggest staying in Europe option that he has at the moment outside West Ham might be Tottenham Hotspur. You would understand if anyone would want to flee back to Rio rather than do that one in the present circumstances.
You'd swim, wouldn't you? You'd swim.
Indeed. He has a special reason for wanting to go now, which is the World Cup. If Brazil go with 3 in midfield, he's a likely first teamer, but his main rival, a fellow called Gerson, has just come back from a bad few months in Russia, and he will be playing in Brazil with Cruzeiro, so that hots up. So he wants now. He wants the move now, and he wants to go back to Flamengo in Rio, the current champions of Brazil and of South America, where it all started for him. Now, Flamengo have a lot of money. They have lots of money. They can afford him. That's not a problem. They can afford him, and they've become like a Bond villain with this new Club World Cup. It's not enough for them to be champions of Brazil, to be champions of South America. They want the world, and they really do. And so they want to buy players of this kind of calibre. The window in Brazil doesn't close until early March, so there's no real rush from their point of view, and there's no really real rush anyway. If it happens in the second half of the year, no worries, because that's when the business end of the Brazilian season is. So the player wants now, and for the club, now is not quite so important. So the real thing is there, what do West Ham want? Because they have a player in their situation, only mildly eased by the 3 points that they claimed on Saturday. A pile of money is less good to them than a player that can help them avoid relegation. Can they, with that money in the time available in the European transfer window, bring in someone who can't be a bet? He's got to be a sure thing. And is a sure thing willing and able to move to West Ham at this moment. So we've got all those 3 things to sort out. But he's clearly coming back. Whether it happens now, up to early March, or in the summer, that depends on how all the dice roll and how all the 3 parties there play their cards over the next few days or months.
Tim, is his reputation, would you say, still stronger in Brazil than maybe it is in Europe now? Because I think there was a point at West Ham where he was hitting a high level on a regular basis, which is why Manchester City wanted to bring him in. But it strikes me that that reputation, and not just because of, the probe and all of that, but I actually think just his general form has declined.
Indeed, and that's one reason why my mates supporting West Ham are saying, there's the door, see yourself the other side of it. But, the players that Brazilian football is now able to bring back, all the major clubs, they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In the middle of last year, it was Jorginho, a veteran who wasn't getting much of a game at Arsenal. And for Palmeiras, it was Vitor Roque, a young striker who hadn't come off. Now, they can bring back, Flamengo can bring back someone who's 28 and is a current Brazil international. So that will engender an element of euphoria. This isn't a veteran rounding off his career. This is someone who theoretically still has, is still right at his peak and can help Flamengo in this quest for world domination.
Okay, just a quick one, Tim, on a player about whom I know very little, but whose name is starting to be tapped out on the transfer wire system, Joel Ordonez. And we know that Ecuador have got a fantastic crop of defenders. He's currently at Club Brugge, but other people tell me that he might very well be the sort of player who might be sought out by bigger leagues, with all due respect to Belgium.
He's a terrific defender, and he really is. He only played. He's yet another one from this club, Independiente del Valle, who produced Pacho, produced Hincapié, produced Moses Caicedo, and so many. I don't think he played 10 games. I happened to see one of them in the Libertadores. I just looked at him. I thought he was like 17. I thought they've done it again. He's brilliant, and he's a regular part. He's only 21, but he's a regular part of this Ecuadorian defensive unit that just don't concede goals. To get in there, he's been playing at right back. Although sometimes they'll play him in a 3. If they use 3 centre-backs, he's the right-sided centre-back. Although really his position is a centre-back. Now, I have to say, I was surprised that Liverpool didn't pick him up in the summer. Really was. Because that was seemingly, that seemed to be the area of their team that most needed reinforcement. And surely that has been borne out by events of the subsequent few months. 2 weeks ago, the Ecuadorian press was saying it's practically a done deal, and then it all seems to have gone cold. I haven't heard anything more, and especially with Mark Gahey going to City and not to Liverpool. Kev, do you have any inside track on this?
Not an inside track, but I agree with you in the sense that not just Liverpool. I'm amazed that nobody has actually pulled the trigger and gone for him because, you know, obviously, naturally you think of Premier League teams, right? But if you think of how active a team like Bayer Leverkusen have been, for example, in the South American market, and obviously they signed Nketiah and they were willing to move really, really quickly because they were well aware, having seen him at international level, that everybody was going to come in and try and take him. So I am surprised that a club like that hasn't taken him earlier, because I agree with you. I think he's got enormous potential. But it's not just the fact he's got enormous potential. He's played a lot of games. I mean, he's still early 20s and he's played a lot of games. And Club Brugge have been operating at a high level in the Champions League for quite some time. So I do think there's a fair few clubs in England and beyond who are actually missing a trick here.
And Tim, finally, you will have probably noticed the extraordinary circumstances in which Senegal overcame Morocco to become African champions for the second time in a brilliant and mad African Cup of Nations final. Tell me who the last team to beat Senegal were.
Well, firstly, I don't think there are no words for what Sadio Mane did today. I think he saved the whole thing. The whole thing. I think he saved the tournament. I think he saved CAF. I think he saved his coach. I think he saved Senegal's World Cup build-up because they were going to have serious sanctions if they walked off the field. So that was glorious what Sadio Mane did. Yes, now Senegal are on this long unbeaten run, with one exception, a game in November in London against Carlo Ancelotti's Brazil. Now I know you're going to say, and there is some justification for saying it, yeah, friendly schmendly. However, my friends, for an African national team, a game against Brazil isn't a friendly. Really isn't. You know, it's the team that has inspired so much. Remember Cameroon in the World Cup? They needed to beat Brazil 2-0 to progress. They got one goal. They got the goal in stoppage time in the second half and were so busy celebrating they didn't care about the second goal. Didn't matter. They had just made history. They had become the first African team to beat Brazil in a World Cup. So it was a big friendly for Senegal. And with Ancelotti having so little time, it's a big friendly for him as well. And Brazil won, and won very comfortably, 2-0. It was all done and dusted by half-time. The good news for Brazil there is the front four worked. That's a team with just Casemiro and Bruno Guimaraes in midfield, with Estevão, Mateus Cunha, Rodrigo and Vini Jr. And they kept a side as dangerous as Senegal at bay and beat them in some comfort. Now, obviously, the World Cup is not going to be played in conditions anything like London in November, and the heat will put a strain on those two. But still, looking at that in the context of everything that's happened before and since, that's a morale booster for Carlo Ancelotti as he prepares his World Cup, which starts with a game against the side who lost today, Morocco. But Morocco, with that functionality and more functionality, are going to give Brazil a very, very interesting test.
Tim, an education and fun as always. Thank you very much for joining us from South America. Next here we'll be going from South America to North Africa, where Tony Aoki will help us unravel everything that's happened over the last few weeks, and particularly the last few hours in the African Cup of Nations. Globe-trotting on Trans-Europe Express. Well, it's been an extraordinary tournament, the AFCON in Morocco, and it has been an extraordinary night for the final, which ended after controversy and what it looked like was going to be a walk-off by the Senegal players that might destroy, as Tim was saying there, their chances in the World Cup and possibly even the tournament itself. In the end, they are winners by a single goal to nil after extra time. The goal scored by Pape Gueye for Senegal, still in the stadium and no doubt still vibrating with excitement and having done phenomenal work here on talkSPORT over the past month. I'm delighted to say we're joined now by our AFCON correspondent, Tony Aoki. Good evening, Tony.
Good evening, guys. How are you?
Really, really good, but I bet we're not quite as overexcited as you are, because you've just witnessed an extraordinary final of the AFCON.
Oh, honestly, I think I've witnessed one of my favourite games ever, especially after what happened. I think that was a really tense game considering Morocco were the favourites. But those last few minutes, I've never seen anything like it. I'm not sure if you guys watched it all, but when we all thought Senegal got the winner, and then it got dropped back, and then the Senegal players coming off, and then the fans as well. Like, I've never seen anything like it.
Tell us about, Tim, who's been watching this, half a world away in South America, Tim Vickery, said that he thinks that Sadio Mane has saved the tournament and African football's reputation by persuading his teammates from Senegal to come back on to allow Brahim Diaz to take the controversial penalty.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's Sadio Mane showing it was why he's the captain instead of Koulibaly. But honestly, because they were ready to come off the pitch, and the manager told them to come off the pitch. And if you do that, especially during a final as well, especially after everything that happened, I guess justice was served in a sense, because it was really the foul that Hakimi put on for the goal to be disallowed was definitely not a foul. But I guess justice was served in the end. And poor Brahim Diaz, he had a really good tournament until that moment.
Yeah, that's the irony, Tony, isn't it? Because, as you say, Diaz has been such a standard bearer for Morocco in this tournament. And of all the moments to attempt a Panenka, that's got to be bottom of the list, hasn't it, really? Yeah, 100%.
Put it this way, I think Zidane barely got away with his Panenka in the 2006 World Cup. So if that's anything, Zidane barely get away with it. I'm not sure who Brahim Diaz thought he was. But regardless, I think it will be a stain on what he had. Even though he's still with the Golden Boot, it will be definitely a statement, because that was a chance to win it. All we have to do is just slot it in. Morocco have won their first AFCON since the 70s. But I guess in the words of America, ball don't lie, and there's a reason as to why he missed and reasons why the better team won in Senegal.
What was the reaction like? Sorry, Danny, I was just going to say, what was the reaction of the Morocco fans when he chose that particular type of penalty? Was there anger? Was there just disbelief?
So a bit of both. I would say anger, at first anger, and then disbelief, because there's rumours going around that Brahim Diaz spoke to Edouard Mendy, one of a friend of mine who works at ESPN, mentioned that apparently Mendy and Brahim Diaz were talking before the penalty, and then he seemed to Panenka it, and Mendy knew exactly where he was going. Now, there's people in the media tribune thinking that Brahim Diaz may have done it on purpose, but I think that's more copium rather than actually what happened.
Yeah, because if you were going to deliberately miss the penalty, you wouldn't try and arrange a Panenka with a goalkeeper. You just put it wide. Brahim Diaz is perfectly capable of kicking a ball wide of a goal. Before the tournament started, we talked about Nigeria and Osimhen and all the rest of it. We talked about Morocco and the money they poured into professional football, Tony. And we talked about others. We also said, and I'm not trying to pat us on the back here, overall Senegal had the strongest squad. Is this a deserved victory?
Yeah, 100%. The better team won at the end of the day, and I think for the first time in a while, the best team at the tournament won the AFCON. I've been saying all throughout this month that the cream has risen to the top when it's come to this AFCON, and all the best teams have been showing out. And the fact that we had the best team versus the host nation, and even though the host nation made it tough with some sceptical decisions, at the end of the day, the better team won. And so I'm very glad for Senegal, because it shows that. I think we all were put on notice when Senegal beat England back then, but Senegal have been a very good team for a while now, especially winning it back in 2019 as well. 2022. And so the fact that they've done this now, and that's 2 AFCONs for Sadio Mane, I think that probably might put him above certain players now in the African greatest of all time, which he deserves.
Tony, I wanted to ask you about not one of the players that made the final, but one of the players that has really caught my eye in the Bundesliga in Germany and caught the eye in this tournament as well. Jan Diomande, because this kid, I was in Leipzig last night actually watching the Bayern game and I saw him. He is a phenomenal talent. He's only 19 and part of a very exciting Ivory Coast team that obviously didn't make it, knocked out by Egypt, but he's got a bright future, hasn't he?
Yes, definitely a bright future. That was one player I was looking out for during this AFCON as well, as he was linked with. He was shortly linked with Man United, so I did have my United lens goggles on there, and he had a great tournament. I think him and Ahmad as well for Ivory Coast in the wins. I think Ivory Coast were a very good team, even though they lost to Egypt in the quarterfinals. I think there was a team that was slept on just because they were the defending champions. People probably expected more. But Jan Diomande had a very good tournament. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a move in the summer.
And Tony, finally, first of all, thank you for your work, and I've really enjoyed these sections with you over the past month. What's your personal memory of Morocco and AFCON 2025-26?
Honestly, I would have said something if the last moments of the final didn't happen, but just seeing that, I think the fans. I don't want to put a detriment on the tournament because I think this has been a really good tournament with very good teams and Africa's best going at it. So I don't want to put a detriment on the tournament, but that's something I've just never seen at a football game before. But in the end, justice prevailed because Senegal, I felt like if that happened and Brahim Diaz scored, I'll be coming on here and saying that Morocco cheated their way into an AFCON final, and then I can start naming you so many sceptical decisions I saw throughout the tournament. But at the end of the day, the best team won. The best team in Africa so far has won. And I think that's my highlight of the tournament. And it's been a great tournament. The fact that now we've got one AFCON next year, one in 2028, and then we're going to have to wait 4 years, it's a farce because you can see what AFCON can give you. Players that you've never heard before, next you're going to be linked with them. And scenes like this, regardless of what happened, we still got the game was still done, and we still saw a good final and the best team won. So it's just a shame that we're going to have to be waiting every 4 years for this in a couple of years' time.
And Tony, safe home and get yourself home to the less rainy climate of London after what you've been through in Morocco over the past 4 weeks. Tony Aoki there, who's given us really excellent coverage of the AFCON for the past month. Thanks to him for the work. There's still more European football. Of course, I've explained to you how the Champions League is in full swing. We also have Europa League football, and the draw for the next round of the Conference League has also been made. We're going to talk about Oliver Glasner and whether or not he will be at Crystal Palace for their games against their Bosnian opponents, and how his current situation at Crystal Palace is a repetition of his performance at least 2 other clubs. Great coach, doesn't put up with much nonsense from the clubs. Talk about that next here on Trans Europe Express. Yeah, the final whistle has gone in Foxborough, and it means that New England Patriots in the NFL, after 7 post-Tom Brady years in the wilderness, are back into the conference final. The semi-finals effectively for the Super Bowl. They'll play Denver, having beaten the Houston Texans by 28 points to 16. Now, the playoffs continue, and the last game of this round, the quarterfinals, have started. And we've got another live game for you over on talkSPORT 2, and you can listen to this game, say the final game, where the LA Rams go to the Chicago Bears. It's right now over on talkSPORT 2. That's live American football, live NFL on talkSPORT 2 right now. Kevin, with events in Morocco and elsewhere, we haven't got much time to look at the Europa League and the draw for the conference. Let's just look at one or two of these games in the Europa League that are coming up. Aston Villa, the coach sounded a bit down after their home defeat to Everton today, and I can understand that. But they've got a really tough tie now away to Fenerbahce.
It is a tough tie. They've done well. They've won 5 out of 6 in this league phase. The only one they didn't win was that defeated go-ahead Eagles, which I think we didn't see coming. But they've generally been very good in the competition. But this is a test because Fenerbahce, I'm fascinated by them because, of course, under Jose Mourinho, they weren't able to get as close to Galatasaray as they wanted. Domenico Tedesco, I think, had a really underwhelming spell with Belgium, with the national team. Very hit and miss. And this is a chance for him to really restore his reputation. And I think with him, you do wonder if there's an element of Emperor's New Clothes, that he looks the part, he says all the right things, but in terms of tangible success, he's still yet to deliver what I think was promised. And so I think if he can do that with Fenerbahce, if he could actually win the Turkish Super League, or he could go deep in this competition, I think then we'll start to see this incredible wunderkind that was promised many years ago when he finished above Julian Nagelsmann in their coaching class together.
Nottingham Forest have got other fish to fry just now, as and teams from East London have closed the gap to them at the bottom of the Premier League. They go to Portugal to take on a Braga team that are doing bit by bit and year by year, closing in on and turning the big 3 in Portugal into a big 4.
Yeah, and Braga have done this for a while. I mean, you think how much European experience they have, but they're still very up and down, as you would expect. And if you look at their recent performances in cup competitions in Portugal, that kind of underlines that, because they knocked out Jose Mourinho's Benfica, which is why Mourinho made his players sleep at the training grounds and put them in Retiro instead of actually them able to go home. But then they lost to third-tier opposition in the Portuguese Cup. So in the League Cup they went through, but they ended up losing the final to Vitória Guimarães. And then in the actual Portuguese Cup went out to a third-tier side. So you never quite know what you're going to get. Forest, I think, I get what you're saying, Danny, about, the main focus is the Premier League. And of course...
It has to be for them.
Of course. But I think they've got a big enough squad. They really should have a big enough squad to still be able to get results in this competition. They went to Utrecht. They managed to get a win. That was a decent performance. And so I do think they've got every chance of being able to pick up a result here.
As far as the conference goes, no action this week, but we've had the draw for the round of 16. And Crystal Palace, the favourites, despite the turmoil at the club for the tournament, have drawn Zrinjski Mostar. The Bosnian side. I can't pretend I know much about Zrinjski. But the issue here, Kevin, is I wanted you to talk to me about Oliver Glasner, because I think you're of the opinion that what we're seeing at Crystal Palace is kind of part of a pattern with Oliver.
It absolutely is. He is a guy that's incredibly ambitious, and that's a very positive thing. If you listen to the way Steve Parish has talked about Glasner at Palace, he believes Palace should be able to challenge for Europe, challenge for trophies, which they've done. They've won the FA Cup, they've won the Community Shield. But with that comes demands and a willingness to push the guys above him to deliver. And if you go back to his time at Wolfsburg, They qualified for the Champions League, and people didn't expect that. And he had been publicly demanding Jörg Schmadtke, the sporting director then, to deliver better players. He wanted a stronger squad. And when that didn't come to fruition, he was happy to say so publicly. And in the end, he left to join Eintracht Frankfurt. He got to Frankfurt, he won the Europa League, he got them to a cup final. But again, he got frustrated. He felt the club wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't pushing hard enough. There was a very famous press conference that he gave when he talked about Makoto Hasebe, who was a Japanese, veteran Japanese defender. He was 39, I think, at the time. And he said, look, you know, we're having to push him incredibly hard, and it's not good. We're at the bare bones. You know what? This is outrageous. And so in the end, that relationship with Frankfurt soured. He was allowed to stay, and he was allowed to stay until the end of the season to lead them in the cup final. But it had been long agreed that he would part company with the club that summer. So, you know, I happen to think it's a positive thing, but I think you need to know how to handle him, because he is relentlessly demanding and ambitious, and that could be a very good thing. But for the guys above him, it's going to be pretty loud.
Where do you think his next stop might be? Whether he stays at Palace for the rest of the season, which I can't see how he can now after that outburst that he did about the transfer of Mark Gahey. Where next for Oliver Glasner, do you think, Kevin? And I won't hold to this, obviously.
No, well, it was put to me recently that, you know, could he return to German football? And I thought about it and thought the reason, right, the landing spot right now is go back to Frankfurt. I don't see that happening, because he's already won the Europa League with them. He got them to a cup final. They are ambitious. They do have money, and they do have some great young players. But does he want to go back there, having had the success he's had in England? Then you look elsewhere in Germany. Dortmund have got Kovac. Kompany's happy at Bayern. Glasner was one of the coaches they considered before turning to Kompany, of course. And you look at other clubs, and there isn't really anywhere to go. Leipzig looked at him in the summer, but they turned to Ole Werner, and they're happy with him. Leverkusen have got Kasper Hjulmand, but they were interested in Glasner in the summer as well. So all of those jobs that would have been available in the summer no longer are. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's in the running for the Manchester United job, but actually I think that could be disastrous, because you think of the ineptitude at the top of that football club.
Yeah.
That would infuriate him no end.
Have they decided who's going to be the Germany manager after the World Cup, Kevin?
No. I mean, Julian Nagelsmann, in theory, has a contract until 2028, and so he could carry on until the Euros in 2028. In theory, there is plenty of interest in bringing him back into the club game. Of course, Glasner is an Austrian, so
that would be a problem, would it?
Where I think it would. I think it would politically. I think that would be seen as a failure in Germany, I think, if they were to hire. I mean, they're still baffled about the Thomas Tuchel thing, I think. I think there's an element of pride about it, to a certain extent, that a top German coach has been given the England job. But I think there's an uneasiness about it as well. And they think, well, why would England do that? We'd never do that. We'd never bring an English guy in to coach our national team. So I think there would be a lot of people in German football that would be very queasy about hiring an Austrian in that particular role.
Just a thought. Now, I said at the start of the show that I was not going to mention a certain club from East London, given their recent and thoroughly undeserved victory over Tottenham Hotspur. And so far, we've had to mention them on 5 different occasions.
Yes.
Kevin, it is with astonishment that I've just looked up Zrinski Mostar, who are going to play Crystal Palace in the next round of the Conference League. Guess who their manager is? Former West Ham star Igor Stimac.
Oh, yes.
You couldn't make this up, could you?
That's 6 times now, isn't it? You've had
6
to mention
times.
West Ham.
I'm going to call him Derby County's Igor Stimac. There, that's what I'm doing.
I think that's wise.
That's what I'm going to do. Kevin will take you around all the other leagues, all the major leagues in Europe in just a few seconds' time. It's been great fun having Kevin back, and he will be with us again next week here on Trans Europe Express, where we're heading now towards the finishing line. Don't forget, we've got great stuff for you. I'll tell you about that in a few minutes' time. Still here on talkSPORT, and over on talkSPORT 2. You can hear the final game in this round of the NFL, where the LA Rams have just kicked off against the Chicago Bears. Yeah, we're into the closing stages of tonight's edition of Trans Europe Express, and what a laugh it's been with that madcap AFCON final, and of course Kevin Hatchard back where he belongs on Trans Europe Express. We've got about 10 minutes, Kevin, perhaps a little less, to go through some of the other leagues. I don't even know if we'll get through everything that's going on in the Netherlands, because I'll start with Ajax, the most famous club there, multiple winners of the European Championship in its various guises. These days, one of the most bizarre clubs in European football. And therefore, during the week, I suppose I shouldn't have been too surprised. They lost the Dutch Cup tie to AZ Alkmaar, but I am surprised by the result, Kevin. Oh, we lost Kevin there. Okay, we've lost Kevin. I'll tell you about this.
No, you haven't. It was my fault. It was my fault.
God.
I'm
Hi,
back.
Kev.
Don't you worry.
He's back.
6-0 they lost, Danny.
Wow.
Worst defeat in the competition since 1927.
Goodness.
They had Owen Weindal sent off midway through the second half, and you might think, oh, well, that will be the reason, surely. They were 4-0 down at that stage. Troy Parrott's hat-trick for him. He is whacking them in left, right and centre now in Dutch football, and the island boss, Jaime Hallgrimsson, was there in person to watch him get that hat-trick. Fred Grimm aptly named the coach of Ajax these days, and the players offered to reimburse the travelling fans. And it didn't get much better in the league at the weekend, Danny, because they were 2-0 up at half-time against Go Ahead Eagles, and they blew it and drew 2-2. They're now 18 points behind PSV in the Eredivisie, and it's just an absolute mess. So we've talked about Ajax a lot, haven't we? Not just this season, but last season as well. And, of course, they were close to winning the league last season, Francisco Farioli, but they blew it in those closing stages, and it's just disaster after disaster.
I should make a point that among the goal scorers for Alkmaar in that cup tie, Troy Parrott got a hat-trick, the former Spurs and the current Republic of Ireland striker. He's now going along at Alkmaar at a goal a game, and I suspect, with all due respect to that club, that he won't be there next season.
Well, he's already been linked with PSV and Ajax, but it may well be that he goes beyond the Netherlands, because not only is the exploits in the Netherlands caught the attention, but as you well know, Danny, what he's done for Ireland, which is just, I mean, it's so difficult to get your head around, isn't it? Because if Evan Ferguson had been fit, there's an argument to say maybe he wouldn't have started those games. But it isn't just Ajax, by the way, who are struggling in the Netherlands. Feyenoord are having a bit of a nightmare as well under Robin van Persie. And they had a derby against Sparta Rotterdam, and they were 3-1 down at home in that derby. So what does Robin van Persie do? Well, he brings on his young son, Shaquille. And Shaquille scores his first goals for Feyenoord in the Eredivisie. He scores two, one in the 87th and one in the 88th minutes. One of them was a brilliant bicycle kick, and they still lose. They lost deep into stoppage time, ended up losing the game 4-3. Now, Quinton Timber, who's the brother of Jurrien Timber, he was not started for this game. He was left out. He's been linked with Lazio. He's been linked with other clubs in the winter window. He was brought on as a sub, and he said afterwards that he was infuriated by being left out, and that he feels he may well have played his final game for Feyenoord. PSV, no such problems for them. They beat Fortuna Sittard. They are 16 points clear at the top.
Amazing.
Ivan Perisic, 900 years old, got the winner with 15 minutes to go.
Boy, could his former club in North London do with Ivan Perisic.
Oh, yes.
Let's talk about Portugal then. And speaking of people who are 900 years old, another favourite son of European football has returned.
Thiago Silva, 41 years and 3 months old, now the oldest player ever to play for Porto. And his first game back was a bit of a doozy, because they played Jose Mourinho's Benfica and they beat them 1-0 in the quarterfinals of the Portuguese Cup. That's another pretty significant defeat for Mourinho at Benfica. And he got a bit of a ribbing as well from the fans who once adored him at Porto. They put up a banner saying the special one has arrived and nothing has changed. So they took great glee from that. And there was a bit of a spat, actually, between Porto and Benfica around this one, because Benfica complained that the Porto security staff had manhandled Benfica fans and mistreated them. And the Porto president, Andre Villas-Boas, came back and complained that there'd been damage to the stadium by some of those Benfica fans. So those two giants of Portuguese football not getting on very well. But a great week for Porto, Danny, because they won at Vitória Guimarães tonight, 1-0. Alan Varela with a penalty in the 85th minute. And it's just consolidated their lead at the top. They're 7 points clear at the top now. Farioli doing a wonderful job for Porto this season. Benfica did win 2-0 at Rio Ave. And Sporting won as well, beat Casapia 3-0.
Kevin, I think I'm going to stop you there, because you've been such a mine of information. I really do want to thank you. For various reasons, we haven't got Andy Brassell, and of course he is the beating heart of this programme every week. Wishing him well in what he's up to. But thank you very much for coming in at such late notice and bringing us such a fantastic version of Trans Europe Express. Thanks, Kevin.
Always a pleasure, Danny. Always.
And I look forward to seeing you on Sky Television, probably tomorrow, in your tweed jacket and Star Wars T-shirt.
That's the plan.
Yeah, looking forward to it hugely, Kevin. Have a good sleep before that happens. Let me tell the rest of you that in our poll, nearly 60% of you think that the Real Madrid coach at the start of next season will be, gasp, Jurgen Klopp. Quite extraordinary. Thank you for listening. Coming up next here on talkSPORT, following his recent death, it's My Sporting Life, where some years ago I interviewed the late, great and my boyhood hero, Martin Chivers. That's next here on talkSPORT. God bless you all. Good night.